running to Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Mr. Vice President, I'm going off script again, I know, but I just want to personally thank you. We've been through some stuff. We've gone through some of the most complex military operations this country's ever conducted, and your steady hand and your leadership during those was a great source of strength for me. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your character. Thank you for your selfless service. Thank you for commitment. Thank you for being a mentor to me, Mr. Vice President.
It's called the swamp. And you know what happened? And you know what I did? A big favor. I caught the swamp. I caught them all. Let's see what happens. Nobody else could have done that but me. I caught all of this corruption that was going on, and nobody else could have done it. Did I get that one right? Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government, while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first.
This is a president of the United States who is a danger to the republic.
America first.
He knows he's an illegitimate president.
The oath of office I take today is an oath of allegiance to all Americans.
The great Trump recovery.
America will never be a socialist country. I will fight for you with every breath in my body.
Russia, Russian, pro-Russian, Russian, the Russians.
Russia.
And I will never, ever let you down.
A dangerous virus is spreading rapidly in China, and U.S. officials are very worried that it could come here.
This is really the worst attack we've ever had. This is worse than Pearl Harbor. This is worse than the World Trade Center. There's never been an attack like this.
The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. What they're doing is using COVID to steal an election. Together, we will make America strong again. You know what it's about? Fraud, fake ballots. We will make America wealthy again. They are trying to steal the election.
Now, under the leadership of President Trump, we are fully realizing President Kennedy's prescient view of Special Operations Forces.
We will make America proud again. And watch, please, those mail-in ballots. We will make America safe again. And in millions and millions of ballots, their vote is under what they thought they needed. They're dumping more ballots in there, okay? And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you. God bless you. If we are right about the fraud, Joe Biden can't be president.
Congress, the chair declares the joint session dissolved.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Devolution Power Hour. Hope you all are having a great week. Bernie Bright, how are you doing, sir?
Good. I warned John in advance. There is wind howling upon the coasts of New England at present. So I was going to settle down by candlelight and start writing out some epic poetry, but then John told me to get on the show.
Yeah, I think where you're going with that is if by chance his power goes out and he has to leave the stream, don't want anybody to worry. I do have Patrick.
I want them to worry because it could be catastrophic.
Well, nobody's
going
to
mean
worry.
Anything.
Nobody's going to worry. We're not going to worry.
All right.
It's just the power going out. You're totally safe, probably. But Patrick's on standby. That's what people are concerned about, is how will the show go on. Patrick's on standby just in case. And he's itching to sell some lotion, he assured me, to the Wednesday crowd. And actually, he's one of the sponsors tonight. But, guys, we have so much to go over tonight. We're going to be here for a while, probably. I messaged Bernie Bright this morning at like 8:30 in the morning. I don't remember. Whenever I got home from dropping off my kids at school, like a whole list of topics. Then it was only after that I started listening to this podcast episode, and I got 40 seconds in, and I had to go look. This 40-minute podcast took me 7 hours to go through because I was like researching and clipping, and I want to like talk about this because it's one of the best examples of a narrative seeding deployment or a psyop or just an op in general that I've probably seen, and so I really want to go through it.
I'm surprised you went so deep into that. I mean, it is a big one, but it's interesting on many levels.
It is. I mean, it's not even so much the topic, but it's who's doing the op, and why. And I'm still not even 100% sure, because it could be multiple things. But yeah, I did get really deep into that, and yeah. Well, anyway, we'll get into that at the end. But we're gonna talk about Ezra Cohen-Watnik. I think he made his first ever podcast appearance on War Room, and that's notable. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure, but we're going to talk about that and why I think it's interesting. We're going to talk about the DOJ and FBI spying on Cash and others, new OIG report. We're going to talk about the Global Engagement Center shutting down and Act Blue. Both of those are some election interference ties. We're going to talk about Matt Gaetz and his new role that's been teased. The Syria stuff's going on. We got Trump inviting
Did you mention Ray, or did we lose?
And Ray.
Ray is like that little thing.
Oh man, I forgot that in my post even. Yeah, Ray is stepping down. Don't let me forget to talk about that.
Fake Iranian/alien drones or something.
Yeah, what the hell's going on with that?
Just a bunch of bullshit.
I didn't even get to that part of Twitter today.
It's dumb. Yeah, I think it's dumb.
It always is. But
that's more Joe Rambo territory. Saw him in the chat.
I saw your conspiracy comment.
Rambo will tell you guys about the fake Iranian alien drones in chat while we're doing the other topics.
Awesome. But before we get to any of that,
deputized.
Deputized to talk alien drones. Before we get into any of that, we do have to get a quick word in from our sponsors. And can you stall? Because I forgot to load the.
Oh my goodness. Well, another little thing. We probably won't get to this tonight. So a little.
Your Tolkien thing.
No. We'll get to that tonight. That'll be a whole topic.
No, we won't. Maybe we won't.
We definitely will. There's glamdring right on the wall there.
I hope your power goes out.
RFK Jr., according to a scoop from Axios, they have a lot of scoops these days from people close to the situation, are deploying that he's got half a mind to find out who killed his dad and his uncle. You know, this is obvious to us.
Why would he want to do that?
Now the media is saying it. You know, they're talking about how he's got a vendetta. He's passing along conspiracy theories. What's kind of funny is, again, this came out of Axios, and they admit that it's a conspiracy that most Americans believe in, that the CIA, specifically that the CIA had something to do with, yeah, this is your fault, had something to do with JFK's assassination. So they sort of give us that one, but then they say it's bad that he wants to look into the CIA's involvement with these assassinations. So potential little seed there, speaking of narrative seeds. The reason this came up was that he, what is this? RFK's motivation for pushing his daughter-in-law, Amaryllis Fox Kennedy, for deputy CIA director. he is pushing his daughter-in-law for that position, and apparently,
wait, who is he pushing?
He's pushing his daughter-in-law, Amaryllis Fox Kennedy, for deputy CIA director.
RFK Jr. Well, Kash Patel's gonna release that stuff. Like, I don't think his
totally
daughter-in-law.
This is purely just some dumb narrative thing. But I think the reason it's notable is you've got the media. They're putting hit pieces out on how this is unhinged while admitting that most Americans believe the CIA was involved. And it's like, well, then surely there's nothing to worry about of looking into this, right?
Speaking of like daughter-in-laws, I know this isn't, but did you see Trump put what's her name? Kimberly Guilfoyle? How do you say her last name?
Probably Guilfoyle.
Guilfoyle, yeah. She got named as the ambassador to Greece.
Oh yeah.
And it just so happened to be on the same exact day that it came out that Don Jr. is dating a different woman besides her. And so I just thought it was so funny. It's like, hey, we're going to announce to the world that Don Jr. is dating somebody else. And my dad's going to send my ex-girlfriend to Greece. I thought that was so funny.
Yeah, Don Jr., if you happen to be watching, nice.
Nice. Okay, now the sponsor stuff is ready. So first up, great Christmas gift idea here for you late shoppers like me, the procrastinators. Little gift from Benson Honey Farms. Merry Christmas from Mo Benson at Benson Honey Farms to help you and your family celebrate this most wonderful time of the year. They have stocking stuffer bundles, holiday gift bundles, and their 32-ounce squeeze bottle is back. The raw honey made from fresh clover nectar is light and mild with a sweetness that leaves you craving more. If you like a little heat on your honey, you're going to love their barbecue sauce. When it comes to cleaning up all the sticky goodness, they have you covered with their goat's milk honey soap. Go check out BensonHoneyFarms.com right now before they sell it again, and use the code DPH to get 15% off. That's BensonHoneyFarms.com, promo code DPH for 15% off.
I just finished having tea with Benson's Honey Farm milk. Benson's Honey Farm honey and cinnamon.
Benson bees
good.
Cannot be milked, contrary to popular belief. But
I don't
guys,
put it in my coffee. Now I'm on coffee, but I do put it in my tea. It's damn good. All their stuff's good.
It's amazing.
The reason they've been around this long.
And they've been one of our OG sponsors. I know many people in this chat or those watching have purchased their products before, but especially this time of year, instead of going to the big corporations like Amazon, support those who have been supporting us and have been in this movement, and honestly, kind of like risking it to do so, because it's not always, it's not always easy to support this kind of community because of the backlash that you could potentially receive. I know some people don't care, and that's great. But yeah, we love Benson Honey Farms. Their products are amazing, makes a great gift. And speaking of another great gift, we got a little testimonial from the brief this morning from Patrick and Ash about tulip blooms, another great sponsor of ours.
Why don't, real briefly, let's talk about your experiences with the products at Tulip Bloom. Tell me more.
Yeah, so I first of all, the castor oil blend. Yeah, so I have been using that ever since you said it was like natural Botox. So I have, these lines across here, but the one I have one here that has been there forever, and it's a chasm. And I had castor serum here, and so I started using it. This, like, what plastic surgeons call the 11s, it's not this massive, deep chasm anymore. And the lines on the top of my forehead are, much, much less noticeable. My skin is better than it's been in probably ever. And, the smell of the products are great. They're absolutely gorgeous. One of the things that I love about Tulip Blooms is they're gift ready. The products, when they come to your door, they are gift ready. They're wrapped beautifully. The scent profiles are amazing. I'm a huge fan.
Hey, this is from Shelly, and she says, I'm ordering every week because people are asking me about my skin. I keep giving it away. My neck looks 10 years younger. Tulipblooms.shop. Tulipblooms.shop. Get it for Christmas. We're going to get it to you in time. So check it out. Tulipblooms.shop. And don't forget to use promo code Badlands, because that supports Badlanders everywhere. And it's 10% off more.
Makes your neck look 10 years younger.
I think it improved Ash's personality. I don't know when she started using it, but I've noticed like a 10-11% improvement in her personality in general. So you better stay on that stuff.
Keep going. I want you to keep talking.
Patrick does not guarantee. He does not make personality augmentation guarantees. This is purely a second-hand hypothetical testimonial, which I think are some of the most valuable ones you can get.
Yeah, totally agree. I hope Dash beats the shit out of you at the next card because you deserve it.
I think we've fully become frenemies at this point. For a while, we were just enemies, but CanCon though still just
whatever. Rambo says Patrick needs to work on a hair product for him, CanCon, and me. It is funny, like he should get some sort of. I'm surprised he hasn't discovered a product that will help hair growth. Cam Cooksey says, I blindly support any and everything Brittany Bright says. I'll stake my entire reputation on his every word.
That is a reputation.
You know how many words
Certainly
he speaks,
is.
right, Cam?
One of the reputations.
A lot of words. All right, we got so much to get into. Let's get right to it. And we're going to start off with this. Oh shoot, I already blew it.
Great.
We're going to start out with this clip from Ezra Cohen-Watnik's appearance on War Room with Steve Bannon. We're going to talk about why it's significant. It's a great segment. I'd encourage you to watch the whole thing, but we're just going to focus on this little clip right here.
I'm bringing out the heavy guns now. One of the smartest men I know in all of national security, particularly the intelligence side, really all of it. Ezra Cohen was acting under Secretary of Defense for Intelligence in President Trump's first term, and is also with us over in the White House in the early years, really in charge on the National Security Council with everything relating to intelligence and intelligence policy. And Ezra is an expert of the games they play in Washington, D.C.
Well, absolutely, Steve, and it's great to be with you, first of all. We had so many good battles in the White House together.
I'm bringing...
Okay, so a couple things here. Number one, Steve Bannon leaves off the position that Ezra Cohen-Watnik was in after the election was stolen, the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations and Low Intensity Conflict. He only mentions...
Was it acting or was it...
I don't think you need... It's a confirmed position by the Senate, I don't believe.
Okay.
So I think he was just put into that role. Don't quote me on that, but I don't think it was acting. Acting Secretary of Defense.
Just wondering.
That position was not acting. He only mentions the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. So I find it interesting he left that part off. But then the first thing he mentions about them working at the White House together, and here Ezra at the very end of this clip, and this is what I want you to focus on. Can I slow this down? I think I can.
The shit-eating grin, the absolute hogwashery coming out of these men's mouths at the end.
Yep.
In a good way.
Ezra's got a grin on his face, and Bannon chuckles when
suppresses. Yeah.
When Ezra says, "We had some good battles at the White House."
Focus on the eye smile out of Ezra.
We had so many good battles in the White House together.
I love it because that's an inside joke to these two people, like the battles they had at the White House together. And now, why do I think this is important? And we just talked about this on your show on Sunday.
Yeah, if you guys want background on this, and maybe this is what they were responding to on the narrative we went through specifically. I know you talk about Ezra in many of your parts of Devolution, but specifically parts 22 and 23, I wanted John to go back over largely because of those two gentlemen.
Yep, and this is what I pulled up and posted in that tweet. In part 23, I go through what's called the hit list squad. And so it started with General Flynn. He gets brought in, and they use false narratives, narrative warfare, and whatnot to take him out, planted a fake story, had this whole whirlwind. But one of the people that he brought in to the NSC with him was Ezra Cohen-Watnik. And then this story came out in 2020 about this hit list squad that was at the NSC, and they were working on orders from Trump to weed out the deep state. And then that's where we get into Higgins and his memo and whatnot. But I'm just going to read these two pictures really quick. The hit list squad. Higgins, 45, a former Pentagon official who consulted for the Trump campaign in the 2016 election as a counterterrorism advisor, joined the NSC in February 2017 as director of strategic planning. Higgins told CNN he arrived to find 2 senior NSC directors and fellow Trump appointees, Colonel Derek Harvey and Ezra Cohen-Watnik. Harvey worked with Kash Patel with the Russia Gate stuff. They were regularly meeting over coffee or gathering in their offices and joined them in a mission to find alleged leakers and those perceived as resistant to the Trump administration policies. Remind me, I'm just going to reference this now. When they're talking about leakers, that is one of the things that the FBI pulled Kash Patel's phone records for, along with other people's phone records, because they were supposedly looking for leakers from Congress. But we'll get to that in a little bit. 2 former senior White House officials told CNN they remembered seeing Harvey and Cohen-Watnik frequently meeting with Bannon in Bannon's office, and the duo made them aware they were collating lists of people they believed were disloyal. One former senior administration official described the group as the Hardy Boys. Multiple senior administration officials told CNN that in the early spring of 2017, Bannon gave a list of names of suspected leakers to Trump while McMaster's was traveling. And then it goes into the deep state existing. They were actively undermining the Trump presidency. And I posted about this, and I tagged him in it, obviously, right? And somebody responded to it. I'm trying to see who it was. Oh, that's a funny picture. Hold for processing. So I think it was a response here. Hold on. Okay, I gotta find my replies.
Reference is hilarious.
What?
That Hardy Boys reference is hilarious. You know, like their inspiration, or like Scooby-Doo gang, basically. They were always falling ass backwards into solving mysteries that none of the adults could solve.
But anyway, so this person responded with this. I think Cohen being appointed to the National Archives Board will come into play and was some masterful chess move. Then they say, wait, did I just get a like from Mr. Cohen? I asked for pics or it didn't happen. And they sent a picture. So Ezra was aware of this tweet, was reading through comments, because this person I don't think tagged him, did not. And he liked that comment.
Sneaky sneak.
Yeah. Do you remember back when
just come on the show, Ezra. We'll send you a link right now.
Oh, I would love to have him on the show. Should I DM him a
little side note? This is stupid, but he was involved in special operations, and a lot of guys in special operations, I know kinetic special operations, they tend to have beards. I can't help but notice that Ezra did have a beard when he was talking a lot about special operations. What is the timeline under which Ezra shaved his beard? Does chat know this?
It must have been recent. I haven't seen him. I haven't seen him on anything. Like, this is the first podcast I think I've seen him on.
It could be a beard comm, which could mean that Ezra has been deactivated from his special ops assignment, which means, and judging by his attitude, he looks like things went pretty well in whatever he was involved in. So I'm just saying, if we get some beard comms out of Ezra, let's take that as a soft confirm that the op is over.
Yeah. Do you remember back, it was a while ago, but Ezra made a tweet about General Nakasone, and I responded to him, and he responded back to me, and then he went and deleted.
And then he deleted
the tweet.
Yeah, he's a flirt, that guy.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Does he have a beard in his current profile picture?
I believe so.
Living a double
life. Yes, he does, and it's a picture of him. It's a picture of him at the Hudson Institute, and if you remember that, this might be from when Chris Miller was on with him.
Still bearding it up in the profile pic, but not in our corporeal reality, Ezra. What's going on there?
Yeah, it is weird. No beard.
Why would you shave a beard and still pass yourself off as if you have one?
He's a good-looking dude, but I do think he looks better with the beard. And I say all that in the least gay way possible.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't trying to disparage the lack of beardness, although it goes without saying. I think, glad for you jumped on the grenade there. But hey, I don't know. Special operations, had a beard, now he doesn't. Now he's cracking jokes. I also think even, I pay attention in retarded fashion to just the word choice of some of these guys, and even just the way he says, we had a lot of good battles. I believe he says with each other, so meaning on the same side. Of course, we would know that. But I could see I could see an interview like that and a little exchange going on of saying, hey, we had a lot of battles against each other, you know, in good fun. We were always arguing with each other. But that's not how it sounded to me. It sounded like he was saying we had a lot of battles with each other on the same side.
I think he said we had a lot of battles in the White House together.
Together. Okay, yeah. So that's even better.
Yeah. And I mean, some other interesting things on him. He was named chair by Trump, chairman of the Public Interest Declassification Board. I think it was a 3-year term. He's still on the board, but no longer the chairman. But that's notable considering all the declass gosh, this stupid cough won't go away. All the declass we think is coming. And there was another point I was going to make about Ezra, but now I can't. Oh, I'm not sure if this is confirmed, but it's believed and speculated that he's the one who handed a lot of the unmasking information. Like he's the one who discovered it and gave it to Kash Patel as part of the Rushgate stuff. Like when they were unmasking all of Flynn's calls and whatnot, he was the one who first came up with that stuff. He went to work at Oracle. He came back at the DOJ under Sessions. He's just got so many connections to this whole thing. And so, yeah, definitely interesting. He was on with Bannon, and I would encourage you all to go read part 23.
I mean, that's just one of those
Sunday's show.
That exchange is one of those. I know some people can accuse of reading into things, but that's one of those exchanges that if you're just a human being, you with no context, if you showed somebody that exchange at the end, they are clearly passing inside information to each other, right? They're passing notes in class. And that's Bannon's trying to keep the interview on rails because we all know Bannon is running an info op in a good way. He's running a narrative info op. You know, Chris Paul has talked about this more than anybody and has certainly never wavered from that. You know, we've talked about that Steve Bannon. For anybody who somehow doesn't know, I don't know if anybody watching this show wouldn't know, but the speech, the inauguration address that is, you know, woven throughout the intro to this show was written by Steve Bannon.
That's
so,
also
you know,
part 23. Yep.
Yeah. So and I had forgotten that until rereading it. And that is, that's not just like, okay, this shows that Bannon was close to Donald Trump. It's that speech. It was a agenda and war declaration. You know, that's one of his best speeches, if not his best speech he's ever given, really. And the fact that came out of Steve Bannon's mind is absolutely signal, and it remains so. And, you know, when I think Steve Bannon, Ezra Cohen-Watnik, and some of these guys, the term silent running comes into my mind of when you're saying, you know, the positions these guys found themselves in after, where they're all in civilian roles after Trump 1.0.
Yeah, happy birthday, Bernie Red.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, well, speaking of the speech, he's the one who wrote it, and a lot of people look to the fact that a bunch of members of the military came and stood behind Trump at that. I wonder if it was Bannon who included that in the speech, right? Like, whose idea was it to have the military come down?
Well, he's a showman.
Yeah,
he certainly understands the value of that.
I also think them having the little riff they had was kayfabe. Yeah, he was at Mar-a-Lago recently. Like, him and Trump are clearly friends, allies, but there's distance created between all these people, and I think between people in the movement, us and whatnot, and not just us, but others, for a reaon. So.
And I just loved that he shat all over Charlie Kirk on election night. That was fantastic.
Yeah, that was great.
Because that used to be my thing. Me and Chris used to argue with that. You would see it all the time where I'd be like, listen, man, I'm almost there on the Bannon thing, but man, I don't like Charlie Kirk. And this is fucking annoying. So, yeah, it was that was nice.
Awesome. All right. And so let's go to this story. And I haven't actually read the report yet because I got sidetracked by that podcast today. But we have this came out, a new OIG report, and freaking what's his name? What's the guy's name? Why can't I think of it? Horowitz, right?
Yeah, it's right there.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was looking at a different screen. I was looking at this screen, the actual report.
Yeah.
I didn't notice it was in there, but Horowitz released a new report. The DOJ misled the courts in order to spy on Kash Patel, congressional staffers. In Power Oversight, President Jason Foster says Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz report on the agency's surveillance of numerous lawmakers and staffers found the DOJ hid facts and deliberately misled the court They claimed multiple times for 40 or more staffers over a 6-year period. They claimed over and over again that we were either flight risks or working for a foreign power, or that we would destroy records if we just found out that Google and those providers had turned over our records. He says, well, none of that was true. They had no probable cause to believe that was true. They had no evidence or support for that. Again, I haven't gone through the actual report, but it is interesting. The timing of this coming out right now, right as Kash Patel is becoming, he's going to be the FBI director. And this came out a day before Christopher Wray resigned. And honestly, like, a lot of people talk about Wray and being like, oh, trust Wray. He's a good guy. He's on our time. He's an insider. Him resigning early from a 10-year term before Trump takes office, before Kash Patel gets in there. To me, this is the first actual evidence we have of that being a possibility, because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Wray stuff, you can take it in many different directions when it comes to Patriot control. Was he a sleeper for us? Was he a sleeper for them? But, instead of getting caught in the weeds there, because ultimately, no matter how firm you're dug in on either position, we just are not going to know, unless he serves prison time or something like that. That would pretty clearly put him in the deep state camp. But the net effects of it, like you said, it implies control to me of the situation from a Patriot perspective. It's like they knew Kash was going to be coming in there, and whatever was done inappropriately in the DOJ is going to be uncovered. And you mentioned earlier today about the podcast that you want to discuss tonight, the term narrative seeding. And that's probably the theme of kind of a lot of stuff that we'll talk about tonight, even with this. The timing of it, like you referenced, obviously it brings us all back to Spygate and everything, the Russia collusion hoax that Kash Patel kind of made his name digging into when he was in Trump 1.0. But from a normie adjacent perspective, a lot of minds are paying attention to the moves for the incoming Trump 2.0 administration that were not paying attention to personnel moves for Trump 1.0. There's this movement is like 3 times the size. So I think it's notable to them, and it lends credence to all the things Kash Patel has said when the outgoing FBI director is embroiled in controversy, when the outgoing DOJ is embroiled in controversy. It sort of greases the rails for Kash to come in. They look guilty, right? They're just, by their actions right now, Kash has been deploying all these public narratives of cleaning out the DOJ, and before he even steps foot in there, these guys are running from a burning house. That doesn't look good from a public perspective.
Yeah, especially after there's been like talk from the media and some members of the left that, he gets a 10-year term, he doesn't have to leave, all these things, like he should stay in there. And the optics of Trump firing Christopher Wray and putting in Kash Patel, it would look like he's putting in his own lackey, but now he doesn't have to fire Christopher Wray. That's like where this is a good narrative for Trump coming in there, because it takes that weapon away from the media. But I mean, they're still going to run with the Trump's lackey thing, whatever. But they can't say he fired Chris Wray. So it's huge. I mean, there's so many things that have happened since 2017 that we haven't gotten justice on, like the Spygate stuff, the Russiagate stuff, the COVID stuff, the pipe bomb stuff, J6 stuff, everything since then. Like, there's so many things that loose ends, we can call them, no resolution to these, that I think Kash Patel could come right in there and sweep it up. And it's interesting that this came from the OIG, because it was Joe Lang a while ago who I was going back and forth with him. I never wrote an article on it, but we've talked about it on the show before, about how it's the OIGs doing like this overarching investigation over everything. Yeah. And that's what's still like going on. And so anytime we get a report from any of these that are related to FBI malfeasance and corruption or Trump stuff, and it's notable. And this is one of those things, because let me read the executive summary real quick. I don't know if I'll read the whole thing. It's probably, it's pretty damn long. I'll just read this part. As described in this report, we make several findings regarding the department's use of compulsory process to obtain non-content communication records of members of Congress and congressional staff and members of the news media. With respect to members of Congress and congressional staff, which are the focus of Chapter 2, we found the department issued compulsory process for the non-content communication records of 2 members of Congress. I think that's Adam Schiff and Swalwell, I think, and then 43 individuals who were congressional staffers at the time. The articles containing the classified information were published as part of the investigations to identify the sources of the leaked classified information. Both members of Congress were Democrats, and the 43 congressional staffers, 21 worked for Democrat members or Democrat staff of a congressional committee or congressional leadership office, 20 worked for Republican members, 2 worked in nonpartisan positions. But yeah, the whole thing is like they leaked stuff to the media, classified info. I think it was speculated that was Schiff the whole time. And so it's notable that he's like, his rhetoric and tone has personally shifted from, we need to indict Trump. We need to indict Trump for like 7 years straight. And all of a sudden it's like, we probably shouldn't be in indicting and going after political opponents. That's bad.
He's the one that I've been using the term hibernation theory, like in that right before the November 5th election, but even afterwards. That goes for the media, that goes for swamp creatures, wherever they are on the game board. But Schiff has been acting in accordance with that template. Not just what you just said, but about prosecuting political opponents. But Schiff was, I believe, the only one of the 3 named in the preemptive pardons narrative deployment that, through sources, told the media that he would not accept something like that, which I had at the time said this is hibernate. Like, he's trying to appease the incoming, the wrath. he's sort of trying to go underground and say, like, I didn't mean all that.
Speaking of Adam Schiff, there is some misinformation floating around there. And freaking Brian Gaetz, man, I love you, brother. I sent him a message kind of making fun of him because he was one of the ones who was spreading this unintentionally. But Adam Schiff got sworn into the Senate like this last week. And everyone's like, oh, why is he getting sworn in early? Like, how come nobody else can do that? This is illegal, all these things, making it seem like there's something more going on there. But he, in California, for that Senate seat, there were actually technically 2 elections. One of them was to finish out the remaining of Dianne Feinstein's term. So he won both of them. And so he got sworn in early. He's finishing out this term. And that's why he got sworn in early. And then he gets sworn in again for the next term with everybody else. So he's going to get sworn in twice, I believe. But yeah, that's why he got sworn in early. It's not anything crazy. But yeah, Adam Schiff, it's funny. I'm curious to see. Yeah, okay, so they released this OIG report about all these leaked messages and the investigation they did, but I don't think they ever got to the bottom of who actually leaked it. So where's that information at?
Right. Well, this is where sometimes I look at the Ghost in the Machine type stuff where they're just seeding these headlines in to grease the rails. But the OIG stuff is like what you said about Joe Lang. I mean, that's the most Patriot plan, like overarching plan framework that has always made the most sense, I think, just because it allows you to reconcile a lot of the competing theories and narratives about the DOJ in particular. If you've had this overarching military is the only way, there's many interpretations of that, but it makes sense to be the OIG. And it feels like when you get these deployments, it's like peeking behind the curtain slightly to the investigations that have been going on behind the investigations. I mean, again, it's who watches the Watchmen. That would probably be the OIG in this case.
Yeah.
Well, a movie John has not seen.
No, we should do. We should have Joe Lang on here if he's willing to sometime. Just call in and walk through some of the OIG stuff, because I think that'd be fun because it's pretty compelling. It's been a while since I've looked through it. But anyway, any other thoughts on Ray or FBI or this OIG thing?
I mean, I guess my last thought on Ray would be that maybe this is just me, but it slipped both of our minds heading into the show tonight. And I think that it's because some of these older narratives, Anons have just front run them to the degree that now they feel kind of mundane. It's like, oh yeah, this otherwise seismic news doesn't really feel like much because of what we think is coming ahead.
The Chris Ray thing, it's been a tough one for me because I've wanted to believe that he's like a sleeper. I mean, technically, if he is a sleeper, you could argue that he wouldn't be doing anything differently.
Yeah, exactly. You get to have that if you want.
But there is no actual evidence. Like, the only reason people think he's a sleeper is because the Q drops say so. I think we got to be prepared as a community for that to possibly not be true. Like, it's just as possible that he's a bad actor as he is a sleeper right now.
Well, and this also isn't supposed to be a blind defense of Q, but in fairness, a lot of the stuff, I think sometimes people even misinterpret the quote unquote wrong information in the Q drops because, you know, the drops infamously said disinformation is necessary, which gives it all this plausible deniability. But I also think sometimes people also don't use direct definition and interpretation of what is said word for word. So, for example, Q does not say that Ray is a sleeper for us. He just says Ray is a sleeper, and then posts a picture of him later on in the drops with a red X through the picture, right? So again, it doesn't mean that that this is like a blind defense of what Q said about Ray, but people interpreted Ray must be one of our sleepers. It is as possible that Q was saying Ray is one of their sleeper agents, and we know this. You know, like, because again, many of the drops were, I don't think, speaking to us. They were speaking to the enemy and trying to provoke moves among the enemy. That's a big part of game theory. So, you know, I don't know which side of that. We're never going to know really which side of that it is, but there's sometimes, unfortunately, a lot of people who follow Q, they will put out their interpretation of what Q meant about something, and then that becomes the central narrative of what Q meant, which we don't know what Q meant. So, you know, again, you can take that both ways. That means that there was plausible deniability there, and we can't give the drops credit for Ray because nothing was firmly stated about his allegiance. But yeah, I just wanted to clear that up, that the drops did not say Ray was a good guy. They just said he was a sleeper.
Yeah. And it's just, you know, it's also interesting because there's other people that, like the Trust Kansas thing, but how many people, like I would say everybody thinks Kansas, what's his name? Pompeo is like a bad actor, but they'll like just but Ray's a sleeper, you know? So not everybody, but a lot of people. They take it either
way. Right.
Yeah.
So that said, just on that point, I think that that's absolutely true. But I also think that the drops probably provoked a lot of panic and did provoke a lot of moves, a lot of self-damaging moves among these, whoever the enemies are, because of exactly this. Because they're playing the same games, right? And going like, I thought this guy was ours. Well, these drops are suggesting he's not. And I'm sure that was by design.
Yeah. Some people in the chat are saying like, or Bill Barr. There's actually evidence that Bill Barr did things to help Trump. He protected Trump from a lot of things. But yeah, anyway, okay, let's keep going here. We got so much to get through yet. Let's start with the two election interference stories. We don't have to go too deep into these, but I think it's interesting that these are both being exposed. And well, one's being exposed and one's being dismantled. So first up, we got the Act Blue bombshell. Dem money platform tells Congress it didn't block foreign gift cards until the fall. Act Blue disclosed that it updated its policies on September 9th to automatically reject donations that use foreign prepaid gift cards. So Act Blue is like the major Democratic fundraising platform, and they were accepting gift cards from foreign entities. Like anybody who you could buy a gift card overseas or a Visa card and use it to make a donation on Act Blue. How much of our money that we sent over to Ukraine or any of these other places were used by Kamala Harris? And when she raised like $1 billion in her short time as a candidate. So this is a pretty big bombshell, and foreign interference, like this is one of those things. This could, I mean, shit, based on Executive Order 13848, they could shut down Act Blue if this goes all the way through to its logical conclusion here. And that's pretty massive.
Yeah. And, you know, I think this sounds obvious too, but the key to enforcement action on something like Act Blue is the fact that it's it's a monetary platform, right? And when it's a financial arrangement or institution, when you're going after RICO, when you're going after organized crime, those are the tendrils to follow. Those are the most effective, not just from a research perspective, but from an enforcement perspective. Those are some of the most efficient vehicles through which to grab all of the bad actors you want to grab. So I think besides the fact that reining in something like Act Blue would obviously be a good thing, or to your point, shutting it down, the bigger implication to me is if they have the enforcement action or enforcement capabilities to shut that down, it would be based on criminal activity. And if it's based on criminal activity, how many people touched that money? How many organizations touched that money? How many media organizations touched the money? And how many fundraisers, or donators rather, how many of them knowingly were involved in donating to a censorship platform, essentially, or a propaganda platform? That starts to widen the scope out here of where sometimes people have a difficult time being like, how could people like, Soros's, etc., actually get taken down? Well, if they've got their hands in cookie jars like this, they can be.
Yeah, media, like buying commercials. Think of some of the big profile names like Beyonce that came and spoke at some of these rallies. All those left-leaning influencers like that little faggot Harvey Sisson or whatever his name is, Harry Sisson. It's all connected. But okay, another election interference story is this one. And I think this one's interesting too, that this is not being renewed. Federal Censorship Nerve Center, likely to shutter, but state would realign staff for same work. And we'll see if Trump lets him get away with that. But this is a biggie. The Global Engagement Center's congressional authorization is expiring with unclear implications for outsourced censorship. A lawsuit by conservative publishers who allege targeting for their ad revenue. State tells court GOP celebrates. So the Global Engagement Center, if you guys remember the Twitter files and like what went on with the Twitter files, them censoring conservative podcasts, there's a couple of lawsuits related to this. I think I have those here. Yeah. Missouri versus Biden and Daily Wire, or the Daily Weimar, as Chris calls it, versus the United States. The plaintiffs are alleging that the GEC directly and indirectly through an organization called the Election Integrity Partnership. That was a big thing I wrote about in my article, Democracy of Illusion, or Illusion of Democracy. And then that's all over the Twitter files. They communicated with social media companies to identify American origin posts as mis or disinformation and affect their takedown, many during the 2020 election cycle. In the latter, the plaintiffs highlight the GEC's funding and promotion of the Global Disinformation Index and NewsGuard. They've been a big source of news on
how's
Twitter.
Tim Pool doing? Is he okay? Nobody. Does he have? Who's he using to check his facts these days so he doesn't get in trouble?
But think of the big
Fence
story
post up
around
his ass.
NewsGuard and Media Matters and the battle with Elon Musk and Twitter and what they were trying to do there. A lot of that funding came from the GEC, and the GEC is supposed to be an outward-facing entity. Like they're supposed to be looking at foreign countries, but they're not. They're doing it domestically, and they interfered in the 2020 election. They likely did a lot of the same stuff in 2024. But so these are two things: Act Blue being looked at, hopefully taken down, and now this is going to be shuttered. And these are two weapons: funding and censorship that the left can't use anymore. That's huge, and this is before Trump even gets in there.
Totally. And the reason I make that Tim Pool comment is not just because I'll seize any opportunity to do so. It's a bigger point here. The NewsGuard, the censorship industrial complex, as you might call it, obviously that's bad, right? Direct censorship, if it's got funding from agencies, it's interference in elections, like you said, okay? Obviously it's a threat to how our republic is supposed to function. So direct censorship is bad, but what's worse, or another way it's bad, is why I stopped watching Tim Pool, years ago for many reasons, but the major reason was that even before, involvement with Badlands or anything and doing the stuff that I do now, he was using NewsGuard constantly to check himself before any of this controversy was out. This was before NewsGuard was embroiled in any of this stuff publicly. And what the power of organizations like NewsGuard and Media Matters are not just that they directly censor. It's that they give personalities like Tim Pool narrative shielding to censor themselves and have the excuse to do so in front of their audience, right? So if you're on YouTube and you want to come across as honest to your audience, you don't say you're censoring yourself. You say, well, hey, I checked it in accordance with this third-party NewsGuard. So you're not talking about censoring yourself. You're saying like, no, I'm using this fact-checking organization. And that's what we need out of there, because the audience shouldn't have to try to figure out whether Tim Pool is intentionally lying to them or accidentally lying to them. They should have to stand by everything he says rather than hiding behind third-party information rating agencies. It's absurd. I mean, he should have lost all his audience when he first started doing that, but...
Yeah, and this is what YouTube has used, kind of like you said, to keep entities like Badlands Media off of there and having to keep coming back and re-signing up. I mean, we do have, how many we got over there watching us now? 85 people over on YouTube. So thank you for those watching over there on our Badlands Clips channel. But they're the ones that keep banning us, the misinformation.
It's because we didn't use NewsGuard.
Yep, but
literally.
Yeah, but we won't censor ourselves.
Yeah.
And this is where the Charlie Kirk, dig came in, is because Bannon said that Charlie Kirk told him not to talk about the 2020 election and the election fraud because he wanted to stream it to YouTube. And that we see that as an issue. Other people don't. That's fine. We don't have to talk about it. But regardless, that's the reason. And so this entity is gone or going away. What does that do for the social media landscape? It could be massive. This could be part of that level playing field we've been talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's, again, with people like Kirk and of that ilk, there's often arguments in this world of trying to read people's intentions. And I've certainly engaged in that kind of theorizing as well. Media figures, I mean, and going, oh, maybe they're doing their part to wake up the normies. And hey, fine. I can grant you that I don't know the intentions of these people, even Tim Pool, who I have a firm dislike for. But if it's their op to censor themselves on behalf of their audience because they have determined that that is the best way to enlighten people, then my role is to call them bitches for doing so. And we can both run our ops, right? And then we can see who goes farther. And again, not in a business sense, but just who stays in the game of trying to figure out what's going out longer. The people who are intentionally censoring themselves for the benefit of their audience, and the arrogance of that stance, the arrogance to think that you deserve to hold back knowledge from your audience that you may have, or not go down certain rabbit holes because you've determined they can't handle it, is completely ridiculous. You're muted. Muted.
Sorry. I mute myself when you're talking so I don't cough all over you're talking. This is kind of a tangential story to this, related to like news media. Trump is now announcing Carrie Lake will serve as our next director of the Voice of America. She'll be appointed by and work closely with our next head of the U.S. Agency for Global Media. Okay, weird. Because when we were talking about this before the show, I thought she was going to be the head of the U.S. Agency for Global Media.
Oh, yeah, I guess I misread that. Work closely with our head. Okay.
Who I will announce soon, to ensure that the American values of freedom and liberty are broadcast around the world fairly and accurately, unlike the lies spread by the fake news media. Carrie was a beloved news anchor in Arizona, which supported me by record margins for over 20 years. Yeah, I thought this was interesting when I was looking up what this agency actually is, the U.S. Agency for Global Media. Never heard of it before. But yeah, I believe they're basically like the group that sends media from the United States overseas.
Right.
That's my understanding.
Mentions Cuba in here. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I found most interesting about this is it used to be, governed by an actual board of governors. And there were 9 of them until 2016. It was headed by a bipartisan board with 9 members. 8 were appointed by the president with Senate confirmation. And the 9th was the Secretary of State. So again, this is just a propaganda network.
Yeah,
this is all they're doing. State-run media. 4 members could be from the same political party, or no more than 4 members. So they said there was partisanship. But in 2016, Obama changed the board of governors format to there's like a single CEO. So there's just one person running it now. And I thought it was interesting the timing of this happening at the very end of Obama's term, right before Trump got in there. Seems like some sort of nefarious move to me, but
well, it's going to be interesting to track. I mean, before the show, we mentioned this and we were kind of looking at this agency. Obviously, we don't think it should exist in the first place, right?
Yep.
But this is some of the fun quarterbacking, game theory quarterbacking with Trump 2.0, with all of these, with the administrative state as a whole, is when Trump is making certain appointments. I think some of them are earnest, direct what you see is what you get deployments, my theory would be, Kash Patel would be an example of that. Like, I think that is the pick for FBI director. The FBI is probably not going to be splintered like maybe the CIA, hopefully, fingers crossed, is. That agency is going to run, but it's going to be reined in. Then I think there's others like Linda McMahon with the Department of Education that I expect that to be steel chair from the third rope, controlled demolition of the Department of Education. When we look at an agency like this, there could be other stuff to read into a statement like that from Donald Trump. Is he saying that he's going to, run this agency earnestly, or is he assigning Kari Lake to dismantle something or to watch whoever gets put there?
Yeah. So I did find this. It's the Voice of America. It's actually its own separate international broadcasting. It's funded by the U.S. Agency for Global Media. Established in 1942. Isn't that World War II there? Yeah, this is totally just propaganda. But they broadcast to 48 languages and roughly 326 million adults per week. The current head of this is this Amanda Bennett. Right now, she's the current CEO for the U.S. Agency for Global Media. She was the director of the Voice of America from 2016 to 2020. Her husband, Donald Graham, is formerly a director of Facebook's board of directors. Was the lead. So,
she looks
again,
like
total
a
deep state.
professional nag. I saw
Deep state
CanCon
global
sent a
propaganda
rant over
arm.
and said all the GEC's employees are being reassigned. It's not going away. It's spreading. I did see that earlier today. Well, we just have to see where that ends up going.
Man, this Donald Graham. His maternal grandfather, Eugene Meyer, stepped down as chairman of the Federal Reserve in 1933.
Look, it's all the same people, right? It's all the same families. Like, it's like you look into speaking of Adam Schiff, you start looking into his family history, and you're like, oh man, it's amazing. None of them are ever qualified for any of the positions they've held going back 3 or 4 generations, but they start spreading them out, right? When you're this deep state cabal and you're running the Federal Reserve or you're on the board of the Federal Reserve, you don't have your kids do the same thing. You put them in media. And then maybe 2 generations later, they go back into banking. And you've got, you throw a Vanderbilt on CNN and you rename him Cooper. They move them around, but it's quite literal when you start digging into lineages, how inbred these people are, which is why their constitution is as weak as their chins.
Yeah, it is nuts. Okay, next story we got, what we're going to do. Oh, let's do Matt Gaetz real quick. Because, the Matt Gaetz saga was kind of wild. He was named as AG by Trump after he got elected to the House. He said he resigned from the House to accept that position. Then all this stuff came out about, the stuff that got leaked from the Ethics Committee. And, which, by the way, we also have this story about who leaked it. Rep. Susan Wild, the top Democrat on the House Ethics Committee, has been outed as the leaker of the Matt Gaetz report. House Ethics Committee was going to release a damaging report on Matt Gaetz last month, but because he resigned from Congress, the committee lost jurisdiction. So I wonder how ethical it is to leak a health ethics report. But anyway, that is what led to him resigning from Congress. He said he still wasn't going to go accept his position as a new congressman. But then he was kind of teasing like he's going to still serve a role in Trump's administration, all these things. And then it came out that just yesterday, he's going to be just on OANN.
Yep.
He's going to be a broadcaster. And
yeah, it's interesting.
I
mean, could just be an organic, move, and Gaetz just making this move. I mean, you're also allowed to think that it's an assignment of sorts. It's kind of funny. We've talked about Gaetz quite a bit over the years as being rodeo clown for a purpose, like the court jester, the representative of Trump's voice in Congress. Well, there's not really a better place for him. If you're looking for him to continue serving that function, it would really be no different than what he was doing in Congress.
Yeah, I was expecting something like a lot of people were saying he could be special counsel. I mean, he still could serve a role actually within Trump's administration. That's still possible. I just found it to be a little, I don't know, not disappointing. That's probably not the right word for it, but
anticlimactic.
Yeah, I thought it would be something a little more exciting than this. But I think it was Ghost in one of our chats. He was like, if he comes out here and just starts like going balls to the wall against the actual inside bullshit that goes on in our government, in the House, then this is perfect.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like the who knows where the bodies are buried refrain is used a lot, but certainly somebody who's been in there, especially the rabbit holes on Gaetz, they're very difficult. They're very winding. They're very branching, but they are interesting through many different readings. You know, you can take some readings of those rabbit holes and say that you're allowed to come away from them and be like, I don't know if I totally buy the innocence in every facet of this story of Matt Gaetz, and yet he's still being used, I think, as a template to expose how the swamp tries to grab onto and compromise young, promising, charismatic populists when they're young, also known as threats, right? They look for people that take the cheese, so to speak. That's the low-hanging fruit for the swamp, and there's a lot of them in DC. A lot of people who go to DC and search for power. The regime, the cabal knows they're going to be able to grab them. They don't even have to pass envelopes under the door. It's kind of the wink, wink, nudge, nudge world where you do what the system tells you to do. You play ball. You're going to find good positions when you're out of there. But whenever they get a squeaky wheel like Gaetz, when you look at the guy who was running this campaign in Florida, and again, a lot of those rabbit holes, you can come away from that with the media's reading, which is Gaetz is this horrible person, or you can come away with that and go, some pretty high up people took a keen interest in Matt Gaetz' reputation very early on. You're muted, by the way. I don't know if you were saying anything.
Nothing important. I was just reading the chat. Apparently somebody got muted in the chat. Not sure why, and people are thinking we're censoring. We only mute trolls.
No, I mute that guy every show that he comes on for me. So that was you guys can blame me. I mute him because he just says nonsense over and over and over and over and over again in non sequiturs.
Yeah.
So
anyway, but yeah,
he's earnestly doing so, but does it on every show.
Well, maybe now he will not do it like that.
No, I've censored him every time, and he just comes back and does it again.
Yeah, only censor for the show.
I think it's a bot.
Could be. CanCon says, say it's lackluster at best. He gets more views on his podcast than on OANN since they got booted off cable. Very possibly true, but maybe there's a reason he's going there. It gives him more, I don't know, maybe they have a legal team or something maybe he can use for some of the stuff he's going to say. Who knows? Who knows why the move here? I think we'll find out. I'm sure he talked to Trump about this before he accepted the position, but from the initial perception, it seems a little lackluster. You're right, CanCon. But okay. Anything else on this? Otherwise, what else did I want to get to before we get to the PSYOP thing?
We've got Syria.
Trump G.
I don't know if you want to do that later. We could do a little international segment.
Yeah, let's do a brief international segment. First up, we got this.
Oh my God, you guys are fucking annoying.
What?
just the usual suspects.
Rose Thistle Art.
Yeah. You're censoring. Yes, I'm censoring Rose.
Bye, Rose.
Go fuck yourself.
I'll censor you too.
The president-elect is about to be on the move. Tomorrow morning, he will ring the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange as the newly minted Time Magazine Person of the Year. And looking ahead to next month, CBS News is reporting tonight that the president-elect has extended an inauguration invite to Chinese President Xi Jinping. Brett.
Oh, that would be something.
The president-elect is...
Yeah. President-elect invited Xi to his inauguration.
Yeah, and it's I had sent this to John earlier, I think. I thought it was funny in light of this deployment. It was like a 1-2 punch. Biden approves national security memo on China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia ahead of Trump's return. Those are the big four that I've been calling them the new axis. It's an easy term, but the media might have stolen that from me. I wrote it down like 6 months ago. They're trying to prop them up. That's the big World War III storyline. It's not just Russia. They're trying to say that there's this aligning axis of powers kind of encroaching on the edges of the game board. So you've got them all trying to boost that storyline of the new axis. And then Trump, this isn't confirmed, but the deployment undercuts that. Like it keeps giving them narrative whiplash where they're trying to go all in on China, Russia, bad, they're going to get you. And Trump's like, maybe I'll invite those boys to the inauguration. We can toss back a few brewskis. And on top of that, last week, I think we were talking about the deployment where Trump was talking about Syria, and he was saying, oh, the Russians, like they're stretched thin in Ukraine. They're withdrawing from Syria. This is the time for Vladimir Putin to go to the table. I know him very well. But then he says in there as well, Xi Jinping can help. He's talking about bringing Putin to the table, and Xi can help. And as many of us have been speculating for several years, it's not just going to be Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin standing on that stage, on the story, making peace. It's going to be the new axis. We already know Kim's our boy. I think I saw Ghost in the chat. If you say Kim Jong-un 3 times, he appears. He's not in there yet, but he'll probably appear now. But
wouldn't it be something if like multiple foreign leaders show up to Trump's, not like multiple?
Yeah.
Like let's just have a BRICS conference
Yep,
at
and
Trump's inauguration.
The biggest name there, or not the biggest name, I should say, but the name most in need, even to this audience, of rehabilitation is Iran. Iran's going to be really interesting. There's references to Iran many times in the drops, but there are also, to the deep state, but there are also references to sort of a good Iranian revolution. I'm one of those people that believes a lot of those actuals have already occurred, but I'm really interested to see how the narrative plays out for Iran coming to the table, because we're not going to see a situation, I don't think, where Russia and China and North Korea are making, signing peace and trade deals with the United States, and somehow Iran is totally cut out of that whole situation. I think we're going to see some sort of public rehabilitation, like a new regime taking over in Iran that gets to represent them. But
so, who do you think is going to be the next one invited?
He's going to keep playing hardball with Vlad. I think Vlad is going to stay at arm's length. Maybe it'll be Kim.
That'd be funny.
Kim's the best for photo ops. Like, he's so joyous. Just bring Kim and Dennis Rodman.
Ghost is in the chat. I bet he says Mohammed bin Salman.
Ghost, were you here, or did I actually summon you by speaking the name of Kim thrice? He wasn't in there. I literally summoned him, unless you told him. Did you tell him?
I didn't tell him.
That's hilarious. Oh my god. Ghost, rewind like 2 minutes.
That's hilarious.
That's funny. But yeah, I think Kim, if I had to put money on it. But it's interesting, again, you pay it. Some of the narrative seeds are big and obvious. Some narrative seeds are subtle, and you got to be retarded and look for them. And last week, some of them hit in hindsight, where I think Trump saying not just the Vladimir Putin deployment was something Trump's been saying for years, like, we got to be tough on Russia, right? But why does he put in Xi Jinping can help there in that statement? And then a week later, he says he's going to invite Xi to his inauguration. So I bet if we see that, we're then going to see 2 unnamed sources close to the situation say that Trump spoke to Xi about the situation in Russia, right? Like, that's how we're going to get some kind of couple members of the Axis are going to start working with Donnie. And could you guys talk to Vlad for me? Because, we've been a little distant ever since Helsinki, and I never gave him his ball back.
I bet we'll see Trudeau there. We're going to see a shit ton of foreign leaders there.
Trudeau's going to be bowing like George Floyd style with the scarf. He'll be kneeling.
Yeah. It won't be a bow, though. It'll be... He'll be... Never mind. You guys, you know what I'm saying. What's up, News Trees? Nice to see you, man. But yeah, definitely an interesting narrative. And then we have Syria. Do you want to talk Syria next? Or was there another story along?
Syria is tied into all of this.
What about the let's talk about the national security memo quick first.
Okay. The Biden one?
Yeah, because I think that's more related to like Trump inviting Xi than maybe not. I mean, it's related to both, but we'll just throw this in the middle here. So
yeah.
Biden, you got it?
Oops. Yeah.
There you go. You can read it.
Joe Biden approved a new national security memorandum ahead of Trump's return that could serve as a roadmap for the incoming admin as it looks to counter growing cooperation among China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia. Biden admin officials began developing the guidance this summer. It was shaped to be a document that could help the next admin build its approach from day one on how it deals with the tightening relationships involving America's most prominent adversaries and competitors. It's always two people, right? 4 broad recommendations: improving U.S. government interagency cooperation, speeding up the sharing of information with allies about the 4 adversaries, calibrating the U.S. government's use of sanctions, and bolstering preparation to manage simultaneous crises involving the adversaries. So that's pretty notable on a few levels. I would read that as that was the deep state's plan for the Axis, right? They're all but calling them that. The media has started to call them the Axis, which is, if you've ever played Axis and Allies, all the narrative branding that we got in World War II, they're just trying to do the same thing for what they wanted to be World War III. This was supposed to be enemy team on World War III. And, talking about sanctions, if you're even like, I guess alternative media, Zero Hedges of the world, even those guys have figured out that sanctions were horrible for everybody involved on Russia in the last few years. So, I think this is just one of those memos Trump gets to crumple up and show the American people, no, actually, the way to deal with adversaries is to not make them adversaries. It's to talk to them and invite them to your inauguration and cut deals with them.
Yeah, I just think it's hilarious. Like, well, first of all, this national security memo, this is like the NSPMs that we always talk about from Trump. It's the same kind of thing. But it's like the Biden administration is writing this memo to give Trump advice about how to deal with, the world and this war in Ukraine, the one that, Trump never started any wars. He was the peace president, and then Biden gets in there and screws everything up, but he's going to somehow have the audacity to give Trump advice on how to resolve the situation that the Biden administration hasn't been able to resolve when they haven't even talked to Putin in years. They cut off diplomatic relations. The whole thing's hilarious to me. I bet this gets leaked at some point. Another angle that this could be for is them trying to take credit for the success that Trump's about to have with all these people.
Yeah, that's a good read on it too. Yeah, because they hedge their bets in that statement where they say adversaries or competitors. They give you some wiggle room there to say this is how you could deal with them. So yeah, you could see that. But they're not going to get. They're in a take bunker, as I would say. They've trapped themselves because they spent 4 years casting the new Axis ahead of the narrative that they wanted to run, and that's not the narrative that's going to run. I do, however, think that the narrative is going to escalate. I think part of the serious stuff is escalating the narrative of tensions between the outgoing Western hegemony, not just in the U.S., but all these leaders in the Western world, from Macron to Trudeau to Sheinbaum, and that have really been escalating their rhetoric against Russia. That narrative is going to keep building. And I think it's going to build for a reason. We even got it didn't make a lot of headlines today because there was a lot of headlines, but we're getting now the weekly dump of look how many Chinese ships are in the Taiwan Strait. We've been getting that for 3-4 years now. Yeah. So it's all building to something. And I just don't think there's going to be actuals on the back of it.
I don't either. We have this from somebody in the chat. Tickle Me Elmo says, no, they have talked to RU in the summer. Who's the guy that Tucker interviewed? The Russian guy?
Sergei Lavrov.
Sergei Lavrov. Lavrov said that they haven't had any official diplomatic discussions with the Biden administration in 2 years. Trump has talked to him 7 or 8 times, to Putin, since he left. And Elon Musk has been regularly speaking with Putin. So that was Lavrov who confirmed that they haven't been talking to him.
Lavrov is one of my favorite of the Russians on the board right now. He's a great one to he's a great communicator too, and I feel like he's kind of been deputized as like the official narrative setter for Russia. He kind of bridges the gap. Putin holds back a lot and maintains the strongman position in the story, but Lavrov is able to say, in that Tucker interview, when Tucker opened it by saying, "Do you think the United States and Russia are already at war?" He then kind of went on a diatribe, Lavrov, where he separated America from the United States as a concept. And that was, he's like, we want the American people to thrive and American ideals to thrive. He said, we have great admiration for American ideals. So he seems to be separating the U.S. into two things, and we all know that that's absolutely true.
Deep state and MAGA, two completely different things. Okay, and then what was the other one? Oh, this thread. It's so long. I don't want to go through the whole thing.
I'll post it in the chat. I mean, I could give people just like a overview of what.
A lot of people in this audience have probably already seen this. General Flynn shared it. I think it was yesterday. And so, but it's a long ass thread, and it's about the situation in Syria. The Syria situation is confusing. Everybody has an opinion on it. I think they know exactly what's going down. This thread is one of the more compelling ones. There's also some interesting things. Like I went and looked at I should have pulled it up, one of Trump's executive orders about Syria, and I mean it's pretty. We'll have to do this on another show because I don't have it pulled up right now. But yeah, if you want to give an overview.
Well, I mean, basically, he doesn't make any firm. This is SL Canthan. Recommend checking out the thread. He doesn't give, a firm conclusion of what's going on here because nobody knows. But essentially, the thread tells the story of Assad's image 10 years ago compared to then how the media changed that image over time and contrasts it with reporting on the ground, allegedly, of Assad being a populist, very friendly to Christians and Muslims, sort of combats a lot of the FUD we hear about him. And, your mileage may vary. You may think Assad's one of these regime guys, but I thought there was a companion piece to that. It just casts doubt on this is yet another leader that the regime doesn't control, and he's being deposed by what we're told are Al-Qaeda-linked extremists or former extremists. And in this whole narrative, I think this guy does a great job of it. But what he's doing here is he's using the media reporting, the globalist media reporting, as a reverse indicator. You look at what they're saying, and how often does what they're saying turn out at the end of the story? Or is it the exact opposite? And he makes a little reference to this in this piece about Egypt and the Arab Spring, but there was a accidental companion piece that the globalist media put out today. Where the hell is it? There we go. Axios put out something that I thought was pretty funny. I don't think they meant for this to accidentally prove the point he's making. Assad joins list of toppled leaders 13 years after the Arab Spring. You guys remember this was during the Obama administration, 2010, 11, 12. Populist uprisings in the Middle East against these strong men. But then they even admit the big picture of the 6 countries that saw the most sustained protest movements in 2011. More than a decade, Assad is the 5th leader to be ousted. More than a decade after the previous 4. It began in Tunisia. Tunisian President Zine Al Abidine Ben Ali was the first to be toppled. Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak fell the following month. Libyan President Muammar Gaddafi, this is infamous, and Yemeni President Saleh stepped down. So then they say Tunisia was the only country to build a sustained democracy after the Arab Spring, but it has deteriorated under a strain of economic crisis and authoritarian leadership of President Said. Egypt held democratic elections, but then Sisi took power in a coup the following year. Libya and Yemen have both suffered through more than a decade of war and instability since their respective regimes fell. Then by contrast, the 5th one, Bahrain's monarchy managed to survive the protests because Khalifa remains on the throne. So one of the 5 before Assad survived the Arab Spring. It's the most stable of the nations, Bahrain. The other 4, they admit, are in complete turmoil after these populist uprisings.
Yeah, I'm going to try to summarize this a little quicker, maybe. So basically, what happened since 2011 was not a civil war, proxy war waged by the jihadists, funded by U.S. and NATO and Israel, I think. Ghost said to scroll down to like the family pictures. Like he was a very well loved within his country. He was actually like very well loved by even the West. He was called the Lion of Damascus. He got a lot of awards from NATO countries. These are pictures from Syria while he was ruling. Like, and this is back in, early 2000s.
Earlier 2000s, yeah, 2008, 9, 10.
And this is his wife, great first lady. For reasons discussed earlier, U.S. and its evil friends decided to do a regime change. Moderate rebels were neither moderate nor rebels. They were low IQ extremists and head-chopping terrorists aligned with Al-Qaeda and ISIS. U.S. funded the rebels and murderous thugs all over the world. Uyghurs, China. U.S. NATO-funded terrorists targeted Christians. It was Assad who protected Christianity in all its forms. This is an interesting clip. I'll play this.
Mr. President, you know the rhetoric of regime change is headed towards you from the United States. They are actively looking for a new Syrian leader. They're granting visas and visits to Syrian opposition politicians. They're talking about isolating you diplomatically and perhaps a coup d'etat or your regime crumbling. What are you thinking about that?
I feel very confident for one reason, because I was made in Syria. I wasn't made in the United States, so I'm not worried. This is Syrian decision should be made by the Syrian people, nobody else in this world. So we don't discuss it in Syria.
What would happen, do you think, if there was an alternative to you? Who is the alternative to you?
Could be any Syrian, any national Syria, and we have a lot. I'm not the only person who is eligible to be president. We have a lot of Syrians, so we don't have any problem about that. But no Syrian would be allowed to be president if he's made anywhere outside our borders. This is a Syrian principle.
So that's pretty damn interesting. Now, what's weird to me, and I think this is just Trump like doing a lot of what Trump has done before. There's executive orders going back to the Bush administration about what was going on in Syria, and it's along these lines here. Let me pull this up. News Trees and Dave sent over the executive order, and so I went and grabbed it. And this is one that he did separately from the Bushes. This is a new one, and it's specifically calling out Turkey. I, Donald Trump, President of the United States of America, find that the situation in and in relation to Syria, and in particular the recent actions by the government of Turkey to conduct a military offensive into northeast Syria, undermines the campaign to defeat ISIS of Iraq and Syria, endangers civilians, further threatens to undermine the peace, security, and stability of the region, constitutes an unusual threat, and has the sanctions like all of his executive orders that come with meat do. And then this is the part that really stuck out to me, talking about who they can sanction, anybody who is complicit, engaged in, and then the obstruction, disruption, or prevention of efforts to promote a political solution to the conflict in Syria, including the convening of a credible and inclusive Syrian-led constitutional process, like all this stuff, the development of a new Syrian government that is representative and reflects the will of the Syrian people, which, I mean, they say that Assad was like this dictator, but was he really? Or is that just propaganda put out, which they always do in these color revolutions? So
yeah, well, that's the point. That's why I wanted to go through the Axios thing and just show that this is the 5th successful color revolution that sprang up on the back of the Arab Spring. Obviously, this one comes more than a decade later, but as that interview clip that he posted there shows, I mean, and that clip is kind of eerie because you've got a media asset there telling him what the West thinks of him. And what we know about the media is that they're intelligence assets, usually, right? So what Assad knows right there is that he is sitting in front of an intelligence asset that is threatening his life directly. That's what that woman is doing.
Yeah.
She's saying, you know, some are saying you're going to be killed in a coup. So would you like to name a successor peacefully while I'm interviewing you in this piece? Or should I go back home and tell them that you said you're still going to be the leader here? And then Assad gets to look out his window, metaphorically speaking, during the Arab Spring a decade ago and see Muammar Gaddafi get dragged through the streets literally and horrifically murdered. And then he gets to see Hillary Clinton cackle about it on 60 Minutes. So this is what these people did, this regime change. And then 2014, what happens after this? It spreads to Ukraine. And we get it against a Russian-backed leader there. So the Obama regime, that period of time, was a reign of intel agency terror upon that whole cradle, separating East from West. It destabilized the entire region. And Assad was one of the last holdouts there. So I think there's a lot more going on here. I think that we're seeing a lot of obfuscation, but
for sure,
it's difficult to know.
I'm by no means an expert in this stuff. I admittedly do not research this stuff a ton. The Middle East, is not one of my geopolitical areas of expertise, but I know Ghost has done a lot. And so I would encourage you to watch his shows and the other people that do talk about this stuff. But there is something devolution related. And like you said here, there's more going on behind the scenes to this. And I'm curious to see how Trump resolves this situation, not how the media or the Biden administration or any of these people recommend the situation gets resolved. So just eyes on that.
Did we talk about the airstrikes? Did we mention that on a show?
Yeah, we mentioned that on Saturday.
Okay. Because, that seems the most devolution related here.
Yeah. And we talked about that on Saturday. But all right, let's do, I think we got like one Badlands boost. And by the way, everybody hit that thumbs up. We're going to read a Badlands boost, and then we're going to get into the final part of the show here, which might take a decent chunk of time, but it's going to be a good exploration into psyops and narrative seeding.
Yep. We got a few. We got a couple from last week. Mark Q Patriot, $10. Howdy, gents. I have a new name for Kash Patel. Kash Patel equals Elliot Ness. I don't understand the reference.
I don't either.
What's that a reference to? And then we have Human Frog. Trump posted defense last week. Search defense in QPost 4726. It has a link to military.com about dues. John and Bibi discussed airstrikes in Syria. Sarah Carter link here that talks about tens of thousands freed from Syrian's human slaughterhouse. Interesting stuff. This was published one day ago. So it's pretty interesting. You're allowed to look at that and say like, oh, Assad's this big boogeyman, or that they left so that certain operations might be conducted against ISIS, and then the...
Oh, I'm sorry. I just removed you.
Anyway, that's all the boost we got.
Did not mean to do that. All right. Okay, so guys, this next part, we are going to go through...
Oh, founder of the FBI. Thank you, chat. Did not know that. Elliot Ness took down Al Capone.
Oh, awesome. Love that.
So...
I did not know that either. Too young. Okay, so we're going to be going through a recent Tucker Carlson interview that he did. Okay, I'm not like, I don't know what Tucker Carlson is doing here. I know he's very well connected to Trump, but there's a narrative op here, and I'm going to show you. We'll prove to you that there's a narrative op, and we can figure out why, what the reason might be. We can speculate on it. The topic of this interview is Bitcoin, but I'm not even going to we're not going to talk about Bitcoin itself. We're not going to this isn't going to be about Bitcoin. This is going to be about the narrative side of this interview. And we'll give a little background on who the guy is that he's interviewing. I am not advocating for paying taxes or anything like that. I'm not arguing about what this guy did as being illegal or anything.
You want us to pay taxes to pedophiles?
I'm just showing, there's interviews out here. Okay, this guy. Let me play the intro clip to this from Tucker, and then we'll get into it. Okay, and you'll see where I'm going with this. We can prove that there is some misinformation afloat from both Tucker and definitely the guy he's interviewing, straight up lying, and they're using that as a reason to set a narrative. And why that is, I don't know. But this is such a good example of narrative seeding and psyops, and so I had to show it here.
Sure, thanks a lot for joining us. So here's how I understood your story. This is what I read. You are being extradited from Spain, an ally in Western Europe, a NATO country, to the United States by the U.S. Justice Department to face life in prison, 109 years, for tax evasion. You're not a U.S. citizen. The period that you're being charged with evading American taxes, you are not a U.S. citizen. And so whenever I see a story that says the U.S. government is extraditing somebody for tax evasion to put him in prison for 109 years, my first thought is maybe it's not really about the taxes. Maybe there's something more to this story. Could there be another reason the U.S. government is angry at you and wants to put you in prison for the rest of your life?
So this is just the context. Tucker's setting it up. that there appears to be some ulterior motive for the government going after this guy. Okay. And he says, you know, you weren't even a citizen at the time, you weren't paying taxes. But that's the, you know, their claim is why they're going after you. I'm going to play this guy's response, and then I'm going to go through the actual indictment, a couple screenshots from it, and show you what the indictment alleges. Again, it's just allegations. It's still in the process. We don't have this concluded yet, but it's a completely different story of what they're saying in this interview versus what is said in this indictment. And some of the timeline stuff that we'll go through a little bit later doesn't remotely match up to what they're claiming either. So again, let's listen to this guy respond, and then we'll go through a couple screenshots from the indictment. And if you have anything to add, Bernie Bright, just feel free to do it.
Well, if you don't want to set up who this guy is in layman's terms, maybe that's better for what we get into.
Yeah, let's.
Of who this? Yeah,
I don't remember if he kind of explains who he is in this clip, and he might. And so let's listen to this, and if not, we'll give some background. His name is Roger Ver. Yeah, you go ahead and give a brief background on him.
So this guy, and you know, this is better topic for G Money, but this guy is known as Bitcoin Jesus. I believe he coined himself that. His name's Roger Ver. He was an early proponent and adopter of the Bitcoin technology, very early. Seemed to be an advocate for it. He was involved in what is called the block size wars in the Bitcoin community, where he was in favor of and did fork the Bitcoin network. He forked the code into a different cryptocurrency built on top of Bitcoin called Bitcoin Cash. And his whole thing was that he wanted to make Bitcoin better. So Bitcoin maximalists consider him enemy number 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever in the Bitcoin community. He considers himself Bitcoin Jesus, and that he was going to save Bitcoin. So that's the background of ostensibly what he sells himself as.
And I think it'll come up in some of these clips that when they forked it, Satoshi, the inventor of Bitcoin, and I called G Money about this just to clarify it. He like sent an email saying that I believe in the small block. So he sided with the original blockchain, and that's what we have right now with the price of Bitcoin. That's the original.
That's the original Bitcoin code.
Bitcoin Cash is still going separately.
Yes.
So that's one aspect, but a big part of what his argument here on this interview is that he's claiming that Bitcoin has been hijacked and like almost perverted in a lot of ways
by intel agencies.
By intel agencies and the government. And I'm going to show you why that's like kind of bullshit, because it's still the same blockchain. And then the reasons for like him saying that don't even make sense. He contradicts himself. But let's listen to his first initial explanation. This is an immediate response to Tucker's context intro of him.
To be honest, I think they're not really angry about taxes at all. I think they're just angry about my lack of obedience and lack of, kissing their ring. I was the first person in the entire world to start investing in the Bitcoin ecosystem and investing in businesses that made it easy for people to use Bitcoin as money and as cash for people all over the world. And I was promoting it since 2011 as, hey, stop using the US dollar, stop using euros, stop using yen, start using Bitcoin. We have an alternative in which each individual anywhere on the planet can be in charge of their own money completely without needing permission from any politician or any government anywhere in the world. And when you're a government that loves controlling people through the control of the money supply, that's very, very threatening to their control of the world. So of course they didn't like that at all. And I knew that this sort of thing was dangerous. And I thought the safest path for me would be to not be a U.S. citizen. So in 2014, I renounced my U.S. citizenship and became a citizen of the world effectively. But my new nationality is St. Kitts, which is a wonderful little island in the Caribbean. And I thought that would be safe for me. And I could promote Bitcoin from there and obey. Even though I may disagree with plenty of laws, I do my best to obey them, because I know when you're advocating for things that change the world, governments don't like that and they can come after you. So I told all my tax attorneys and everybody else, we have to do everything perfect so that there's no room for the US government to give me a hard time about any of this. And more than a decade after I had already renounced my US citizenship, and just a couple of weeks after I published a book on the hijacking of Bitcoin, how it no longer works as peer-to-peer cash for the world, and it's been morphed into something that's just a digital asset that people are speculating on the price on, rather than something that can compete with the US dollar and the euro and the yen for use as currency around the world. Suddenly, right after my book gets published that exposes how people claiming to work for intelligence agencies hijacked Bitcoin to do that. Suddenly I get arrested and tossed in jail in Spain and trying to be extradited to face more than 100 years in prison.
So he claims he's an early adopter of Bitcoin. And
that is true.
Very true. He was one of the first companies to accept payment as Bitcoin. Again, that stuff's accurate, but then it starts to get a little muddy. He's saying that he wanted to leave the country and, expatriate, and he hired a law firm, it was a law firm originally, and then 2 appraisers to help him with the process to pay the taxes. Because when you expatriate, there's a taxation you have to pay for your assets, so you don't just like leave with all your money and go pay taxes elsewhere. The government wants their cut like they always do. I'm not going to advocate for whether that's a good thing or not. Like, that is not the stance I'm taking. I'm simply pointing out the contradictions here. And he is claiming that the government is coming after him because he's trying to expose their takeover and corruption of Bitcoin. Okay, that is what he's saying. But that is not what the indictment alleges. So I'm going to show a couple screenshots here. And then I actually have a video of G-Money calling into InfoWars and talking about this guy that I got to play. But first, a couple screenshots. Number one, this is directly from the indictment. The scheme to defraud operated in substance as follows. In August 2012, the defendant, Ver, hired Law Firm 1 to assist with his potential expatriation, including estimating any potential exit tax. Law Firm 1 told defendant Ver that to estimate his exit tax, he should pretend to sell off his assets on the day before his anticipated expatriation and calculate a tax on any gain from those pretend sales above $651,000. So that means, like, let's say you have $1 million worth of Bitcoin and you're going to leave the country. You don't actually have to sell your Bitcoin, but if you were going to sell it that day, whatever value you would get from that sale, that's the amount that you would technically pay taxes on. And so that's what his law firm is advising him to do. It goes on, after defendant Ver was so advised, but before he was able to expatriate, he concealed and provided false information to his various advisors regarding the number and value of Bitcoins he owned and controlled both personally and through his companies. Okay. So he owned a shit ton of Bitcoin worth a lot of money, and he did not want to disclose it to anybody because he did not want to pay the taxes on it. And it goes on. And I won't read all of this, but they were going through emailing back and forth draft valuations for him, his 2 companies, Memory Dealers and Agile Stars, because they were the companies that were accepting. He was responding about, if the Bitcoin values are market value on the dates of valuation. So the big debate here was what date of valuation they should be used. That was originally. Then if the shown value, or if the value shown is that value, no problem. Otherwise, an adjustment should be made up or down to show the fair market value. At no time did the defendant object to incorrect valuations or anything prepared by the appraiser, number one. So this is the first appraiser, okay? He hired 2 of them. Like, one was a big company. The second appraiser he hired was just like one guy, because the first company was like not willing to kind of budge on how much taxes he was supposed to pay. And there's 2 interesting things he did here. He never actually told them about how much Bitcoin he had, but he asked like hypothetical questions. Completely hypothetically speaking, what would the ramifications be if I were to have had 200,000 Bitcoins at the time of my renunciation? Lawyer 1 replied and advised defendant to obtain an appraisal of his personally held Bitcoins from a third party who had no personal interest in the tax implications of the appraisal. A week later, defendant Ver asked appraiser 2 if appraiser 2 could provide a valuation for an amount of Bitcoins as of February 4th, 2014. In a follow-up email, Ver asked if appraiser 2 could assist, stating, I actually have all the information you need to make it super easy. I would just need to explain it all, and then you would affix your name to it. Approximately 2 weeks later, appraiser 2 responded to Ver, indicating he would take a look at the information, but Ver never actually told him how much Bitcoin he had. And then he would later ask to opine on how appraiser 2 would hypothetically value someone's Bitcoins if the number of Bitcoins was substantially more than the total number even traded on that day. I thought that was very weird. And so then they continued, just like, can you just tell us how much Bitcoins you had? Like, tell us how much. And he never would tell them. And then this part is probably the most damning. A few days later, he wrote another email. He said, reading between the lines of what appraiser 2 said, it sounded like the appraisal will be much lower if the Bitcoins are owned by a corporate entity rather than myself personally. And he further stated, perhaps it will be easier for tax reporting requirements if I gave all my Bitcoin to my partner, not legally married wife, in Japan. And then it gets into what he actually did here. After this falsely claimed that he gifted Bitcoins to his partner in November of 2011. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. He said that he didn't have any Bitcoin in filings. Like, he was lying on tax forms. Like, he committed a actual tax fraud. It's 42 pages. I would encourage you all to go read it, and I'll post it in the chat here. I could go into more detail, but he didn't pay taxes. Like, he is estimated to owe roughly $50 million in taxes based on this expatriation tax law. Whether or not it's a legitimate law or not, or constitutional, I'm not going to argue that. But that is what actually happened according to the alleged indictment. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I do want that to be clear. I mean, we're not advocating necessarily for what the government should have got out of him. I think it's ridiculous. I'm a proponent of, and I hope that when Trump comes in, if Trump wants like the easiest win he could possibly get from a narrative perspective, ending capital gains ending all taxation, of course, would be fantastic. But ending capital gains tax on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies would be like move number one, because it's the easiest win possible. Just designate the stuff as money, right? So that's a stance there. But separate from this indictment, I mean, the reason John's laying it out is because he's misrepresenting the reason, right? And you can trust somebody more, in my view, if they're like, listen, I think taxation is bullshit. I think it's theft. I don't think I should have had to explain to the government how much Bitcoin I had. I don't think there should be expatriation fees, etc. Then you're able to engage more with the rest of what he's saying. But he's not even willing to take that stance. If you had G Money in that position, he would tell you exactly what he thought, exactly why he was in the situation he was in. Roger Ver doesn't do that. But there's the obfuscation here, and we'll get to it in another clip, but even the clip you already played, keep in mind, guys, this guy was the one who forked Bitcoin into a different network because he thought he needed to fix Bitcoin. He named himself Bitcoin Jesus, but he spends that whole clip John just played talking about how he was a Bitcoin evangelist who believes in that it's sound money and it's freedom money and all this kind of stuff, right? But then he doesn't tell Tucker any point in this interview that he was the one who forked Bitcoin into a different direction. So he's presenting himself in the interview as a Bitcoin maximalist, and he is literally the guy who is an anti-Bitcoin maximalist. He is a guy that thinks the original protocol of Bitcoin was wrong and that he needed to fix it. And as you said earlier, John, which is going to be relevant for people in another clip, he was stopped by forking the network on a consensus protocol.
He wasn't stopped by him.
Okay, but the protocol, he didn't gain consensus with the original Bitcoin protocol by Satoshi.
And
Satoshi protected the original protocol is what I mean.
Yeah, Satoshi came out. It was stopped by the original protocol. It kept going, and Satoshi came out in agreement with the original protocol and the smaller blocks. But yeah, my point here, I agree with everybody in the chat about the tax stuff. Totally. Well, maybe not totally, but I agree with you guys. That's not my point here. I'm saying he's misrepresenting the reason for his indictment, and he is alleging that they're coming after him because he wrote a book about the government taking over and basically capturing Bitcoin. Right. Okay. Right. And so let me play the G Money clip really quick. And then we will, this is classic G Money. Love it. And then we'll continue with a couple of these clips.
When was this? Does it say here?
This is, I don't know. This is a while ago.
It was years ago.
Yeah. Man, that's a long ass clip. I forgot about that. I'll just play some of it.
It might be worth. I mean, it's a good one.
Basic generalities and how these systems work, but I can't vouch for you or the other groups. I want to be clear about that, just because I'm not usually flying somewhat blind. Let's go to somebody that disagrees up front. Add some balance to this. Garrett in California, you're on the air worldwide with Roger Ver.
Hey, Alex, big fan. Love your supplements. Just want to say that Bcash is just a fork of the original Bitcoin, and it's a scam. It's a Chinese scam coin that this guy, Roger, who's been arrested for selling explosives and all this other crap, is trying to push his own agenda and actually take down Bitcoin.
Okay, I said arrested for what?
He was arrested.
So I'd love to reply to that.
Well, hold on. Arrested for what?
arrested for selling explosives.
Apologies about the audios, guys. It's the clip's fault. But what he's saying is it's a scam coin, and this Roger guy was arrested for selling explosives online. In the Tucker interview, he addresses that, and he says he was just selling fireworks. I bet that's what he says here. But yeah, in order to sell fireworks online, you need a license. He didn't have one, so he got arrested. He spent time in jail for it.
His Bcash is basically just a fork of the original Bitcoin.
I heard that part. Okay. We'll come back to you in a minute, Garrett. Go ahead, Roger.
So this guy very well could be a paid operative trying to disrupt Bitcoin Cash. It's very simple. The name is Bitcoin Cash, not Bcash. Bcash is a completely separate project, not related at all to BCH, which is in reference to Bitcoin Cash. In reference to me selling explosives on the internet, that's absolutely true. In reference to me selling explosives on the internet, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true.
That's a felony. The point is, let's see how Garrett responds to that. Garrett?
Alex, well, if you look at some of the transaction fees and some of the stuff, Bitcoin was originally developed to be open source, that anybody could mine it. What happened is Roger Ver and his buddy Jihan Wu, they control the miners that basically mine Bitcoin, and they actually won't even allow other people to mine their other Bcash. They basically have cut off the market. So Bcash is actually essentially controlled scam coin that's basically done in China. I only buy Bitcoin. I recommend everybody else to only buy BTC. That's the code for it. Buy Bitcoin. You can buy it pretty much anywhere. But Bcash is a scam. Don't buy it.
This is why I didn't get involved in it. And that's why I stay away from all this, because it just gives me a headache, Roger, because you seem like a nice guy.
I'm going to share this clip in the chat for the rest of you guys to watch. I want to keep going, though.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, though, off the bat that Ver's immediate response, as feds do, is to accuse somebody speaking the truth of being a Fed and a paid operative. And again, the key there is that if the audience doesn't know who's the paid operative between G-Money and Ver, it's probably the guy who's trying to take the Bitcoin protocol and turn it into a different thing, rather than the guy who's telling you to just buy the Bitcoin protocol.
And I think we got a rumble around here at Space Monkey. Roger Ver did not fork Bitcoin. He was an advocate, but he had nothing to do with the split. When I was on the phone with G-Money and some of my research, he was good friends with the guy who, like him and one of the guys who's like a big, he might have even been a seller of like the ASIC computers that were the miners at the time. Like they were the ones trying to get the fork. Like, so he was part of the op to get the fork. That's my understanding.
He's also good friends with Craig Wright, who claimed for years that he was Satoshi Nakamoto fraudulently and has been found to have been making fraudulent claims in several international courts.
Yeah.
So that's one of his good friends.
Okay, but let's keep playing with the interview, because again, the point of this is to show you the op that's going on here. And this next clip, I think you'll pretty clearly see some sort of op here. It's like an anti-Bitcoin op developing. Okay.
Now, I should just add an editorial comment. I mean, I am an American citizen and will remain one, I hope. So I'm not against the U.S. dollar in principle. It's the mismanagement of the U.S. dollar, I think, by the people in charge of it, the U.S. government, the Federal Reserve, has made it kind of a sketchy proposition long term. It's like their mismanagement has forced people to think about alternatives. And one of the most promising alternatives was Bitcoin. And it
was Bitcoin. Notice how he said that. One of the most promising alternatives was Bitcoin.
Because I remember very well, since I'm 55, when it first appeared, the idea was this is a way for people to conduct business, to buy goods and services without being controlled, to have, as you said, control over their own money, autonomy. And it has become instead this asset class. And I'm very interested in how exactly that happened. And so if you wouldn't mind explaining the thesis of your book, what you saw, how that happened. You say subterfuge by the intel agencies played a role. I'll stop talking and let you explain what you saw.
Now keep in mind that the timing of this, it comes out like mainstream media. I think MSNBC and a couple of the other mainstream networks are like on a binge of anti-Bitcoin stuff. Like it's weird. Like there's a mainstream media op against Bitcoin as well, while it's at its like highest prices almost ever. So the timing of this is weird as well.
Well, and John, just on that note, Eric Trump literally yesterday, I think, just gave a keynote address on how his father believes in Bitcoin and how they need to do the stockpile. So the Trumps are praising Bitcoin, and now we've got an op spinning up about, and again, that clip you just played, they're talking around it. But neither of them says Bitcoin bad. They both say Bitcoin was really, really good, but then they don't talk about how Ver was involved in forking it, etc. So it's like, if you really believed in the fork of Bitcoin, why don't you just go on Tucker Carlson and explain to everybody watching why Bitcoin is bad and evil and your fork of it is better? He doesn't say that at any point in the interview.
Yeah. And I'm willing to give Tucker the benefit of the doubt. I mean, the information about all this stuff is publicly available, but maybe he just didn't research it. He had a friend, or for whatever reason, this guy came on the interview, and he's just like hook, line, and sinker into what this guy is telling him. But what this guy is telling him is total misrepresentations, and we're going to see more of that. This is the reasoning. This might be a longer clip too, but this is the reasoning he's saying that how they hijacked it. Okay, and this is pretty interesting because it's pretty stupid.
Totally.
In June of 2011, and in the course of 2, maybe 3 weeks, the price of Bitcoin went from around $3 a Bitcoin to $30 a Bitcoin. And that was the first time in the history of Bitcoin up to that point in which it started to get some worldwide media attention. And what an interesting thing happened. So the main discussion forum where everybody up to that point was talking about Bitcoin was a website called bitcointalk.org. And suddenly, when it was getting some media attention around the world and international newspapers, this forum that had worked wonderfully up to that point where people could discuss things became flooded with bots, just posting comments that were just, fluff, and made literally, they DDoSed the forum to the point that it was unusable. And anybody that came there because they heard about Bitcoin in the media that week, they weren't able to learn about it because there's just so many posts saying, buy, sell, oh no, and just saying nothing of any substance whatsoever. So somebody out there literally made the forum unusable as early as 2011. And around that same time, we already know that the CIA was interested in Bitcoin because they were asking different Bitcoin developers to, hey, can you explain Bitcoin to us? So way back when the vast majority of the world hadn't even heard of Bitcoin yet, the CIA was looking into it, and somebody was actively preventing it from spreading as quickly as it otherwise could have by shutting down the forum effectively when so many new people were coming to Bitcoin to learn about it for the first time. And in the early days, everybody knew, though, Bitcoin was supposed to be money for the world. Bitcoin was supposed to be used for payments as peer-to-peer cash for the world. And that's how people were using it. And, I was doing payroll in it, and I was paying my suppliers overseas. I hosted the first Bitcoin meetup ever in China about it. Like, I was really doing my best to spread this all over the world, including, paying for national radio ads for it. Like, it was really, really spreading. But then later, in, I believe, 2012, a person using the name John Dillon, who claimed to work for intelligence, spent more than $10,000. I forget the exact amount, but a significant sum of money to start producing propaganda to trick people into thinking that by keeping the blocks on Bitcoin small, it would make it more decentralized. And literally the exact opposite of the truth, the exact opposite of the way Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, designed it and promoted it, and the exact opposite of the way that people were using it. And nobody believed the propaganda initially. But then...
And remember, Satoshi came out and in an email said that he agreed with the original version of Bitcoin. So
yeah,
again,
this is the key. This is the key inversion that Ver gives for everybody in chat saying he's not misrepresenting his position. He absolutely is obfuscating his position by praising Bitcoin, obfuscating the fact that he wanted to fork the protocol. He disagreed with the original protocol. He talks about Satoshi and praises him in this while not mentioning the fact that he was the one who completely disagreed with Satoshi about the future of the Bitcoin protocol. So again, it's like if his representation of government takeover of Bitcoin is that Ver was an evangelist for Bitcoin, but then thought it needed to be changed, and that the intel agencies came into Bitcoin and preserved it in its original form. That's essentially his argument, right? Normally, what it would, as a layman, I would think that if the government or CIA came in and interfered with a technology, they would probably change it in some way, wouldn't they? If they thought it was a threat to them, they would probably change it and try to take control of it. Sort of like a lot of people watching this show that maybe are not Bitcoin maxis, etc. You can draw a lot of analogs to what I think is going on in this interview and what a lot of us witnessed during the Q op, where many people who followed Q, there were a lot of pretenders who were coming out and talking about how they knew the real Q and they had the real information, right? It's pretty similar.
Yep, we'll keep going here.
Later, this giant wave of censorship took place. Anonymous people that nobody knows their real names managed to get control of all the main discussion platforms for Bitcoin. And then suddenly, one day overnight, nobody was even allowed to advocate for Bitcoin being used as money. And they censored anybody that tried to do that. And initially, everybody saw through it. But then everybody that came to Bitcoin after the censorship began, they just started believing it. And today, the main people that are out there promoting Bitcoin, they literally say, oh, Bitcoin shouldn't compete with the US dollar. Bitcoin, you shouldn't use it as money.
See Tucker's face there? But
he's got the shocked.
who is saying, like, I guess I don't follow Bitcoin people exclusively. I mainly only listen to G-Money, but I don't hear people saying that
I think if I'm trying to cut him slack here, he's referencing probably Michael Saylor, who's probably the most famous, Bitcoin maximalist, and yet Saylor often pushes back on maximalists when they threaten the central banking apparatus and when they threaten the hegemony of the dollar.
Gotcha.
And Saylor has said, even on podcasts on Badlands Media when he was on Rug Pull, that he just doesn't think that's a great rhetorical approach to getting the government to adopt Bitcoin, because if you're telling them it's going to threaten the dollar, it's not true, because it can be used to back the dollar. So, which is what Donald Trump has said. You could use it as a strategic reserve. Okay. But he's talking around it again by saying Bitcoin used to stand for all these things, and he just never gets to the point where he says, "So I thought I'd change it and make it better."
I'm gonna press play again.
You shouldn't use it to pay for things. Like, Bitcoin is just a digital asset. You should just hold it. And it's the exact opposite. They've through the censorship and the propaganda, they've literally hijacked Bitcoin. And I literally wrote an entire book about it. You can find more at hijackingbitcoin.com. It's available on Amazon and everywhere else. And lo and behold, just a couple of weeks after the book is published, I get arrested, and now I'm facing 109 years in federal prison for having exposed the way in which Bitcoin was hijacked. And you can think all day long that the new version of Bitcoin that people are promoting is better. Okay, but you can't admit that it wasn't hijacked. And luckily now we have thousands of different cryptocurrencies, and I support competition, right? I was never a Bitcoin maximalist or any other cryptocurrency maximalist. I'm a utilitarian freedom maximalist. Whatever gives the most utility and is the most useful for the most people around the world to improve their lives and create more economic freedom that leads to more economic growth, that's what I want to be out there and promote to the world.
I agree with the utility argument, but he's misrepresenting the reason and the timing of this indictment. And I think I want to see if I have this other clip, because if I do, then I'm going to wait. I think I'm going to wait on some other screenshots I have. But he's totally lying. He's like, I wrote this book that came out in April of 2024, and lo and behold, right after that, I get arrested, and like, that can't be a coincidence, right? That's a misrepresentation. I'll prove it to you. But anyway,
yeah. That the only again on that last little thing he says there, it's total inversion. It's like you're watching an asset misrepresent the truth. He specifically says there, people are not admitting the new Bitcoin. People that are defending the new Bitcoin are not admitting that it's been hijacked by the government. He is literally the one who created or helped create a new fork of Bitcoin called Bitcoin Cash, which he never says here. It's like the most obvious example possible of accuse others that which you are doing. It's amazing.
Yep. Okay, let's go to the next one. And this is where he pitches other cryptocurrencies. And now might be a good time to show this. He is involved right now in another lawsuit. I don't have the screenshots. I'm going to play this and then I'll pull the screenshots.
The most frustrating part from my perspective is the inability to use cryptocurrency apparently with any privacy. I mean, that is the core promise. I earned the money, didn't do anything wrong, and I would like to buy something that's sort of no one's business, whether I'm buying it or not. And I would like to do that in privacy. I don't think that's a weird thing to want. It's a human thing to want. And is that possible? Is my question. Is it now possible to conduct any kind of business with crypto anonymously?
So in the early days, everybody thought Bitcoin was basically anonymous, and people treated it that way. And then websites came up that were selling things that governments might not necessarily want you to buy. And people were using Bitcoin for that because they thought it was basically anonymous. And then later on, we found out that it wasn't anonymous at all, but additional steps were taken to make Bitcoin even less anonymous. And today, most people are just using custodial wallets, which are, it's not even a wallet. It's just an account, and it's no more private than your, Bank of America or PayPal account. In fact,
this is why we advocate to get into cold storage, take it off the exchanges all the time.
It's even less private than those things because anybody can take a look at the blockchain and see what's there. But luckily, there's other cryptocurrencies out there that do give people more privacy. So there's things like Monero, which most people are now using if they want some privacy. But there's
remember that one, Monero, the first one he lists. Remember that.
Even more exciting technologies and coins out there. There's another one called Zeno that allows anybody to create their own privacy token in which nobody can see what's going on. And if you really want to get the three-letter agencies upset or governments upset, there's a project called Confidential Layer, which is creating a bridge from Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Ethereum onto Zeno. So you can take Bitcoin with no
He's shilling other cryptocurrencies.
privacy at all, or Ethereum.
This is what's crazy about it. So he comes out here, he's misrepresenting himself and the reason the government's after him, misrepresenting Bitcoin. And
never mentions Bitcoin Cash once, which is what he's most famous for.
He's saying Bitcoin was hijacked, even though it's still on the original protocol, hasn't changed. When he was, maybe he wasn't the one who did it, but he was a major proponent of the fork and owns a bunch of Bitcoin Cash, or at least did. And he's on here shilling other Bitcoins. And Tucker's participating in this op. Whatever the goal of the op is, we can speculate at the end here, but
with no privacy at all, and bridge it permissionlessly with no custodian and no central point of attack onto Zeno. And when it's on Zeno, you have very, very strong privacy with that as well. And so I think that's going to make a whole lot more privacy come to the entire cryptocurrency ecosystem.
Okay. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, again, what I find most damning about the interview and the conversation is that he never mentions what he is literally most famous for. It's this massive addition by subtraction where it's Signal. He does not mention Bitcoin Cash. He keeps talking about how the government hijacked Bitcoin, and yet, as you just said, Bitcoin remains on its original Satoshi-endorsed protocol, and Roger Ver was against that protocol and never admits that during this interview. He just starts talking about how he's okay with alternatives.
Yeah, and so the reason I wanted you guys to remember Monero is because right now, Ver is being sued by another crypto company out there, GGC International. They entered into an agreement upon 3 options with expiration dates. Sorry, in 2022 alone, the parties entered into 31 cryptocurrency options transactions. The terms of each transaction were memorialized in confirmation. Throughout 2022, as a result of the transactions entered into by the parties, Ver owed money to GGC International, including as much as $135 million in June of 2022. It's actually when Monero was at its highest point. Keep that in mind as well. GGC International repeatedly accommodated Ver when he suffered from liquidity problems and was unable to post required collateral. And then you see here at the bottom under 36, 3 options which expired were GGC International agreed to purchase from Ver a put option for 70,000 units of Bitcoin Cash, and then some for Ethereum, and then some regular Bitcoin. And then this is the part. This is from his response to them. Firstly, GGCI never required Ver to post US dollars or reference currency as collateral. They allowed Ver to use unrelated digital assets such as Monero or Binance Coin. So he's pushing coins that he owns, and he hasn't paid back people for. It's in the middle of court again. It hasn't been concluded yet, so we'll see how this pays out. But GGCI sued Ver for owing millions and millions of dollars. They're asking, I think, for a final number of over $20 or $30 million. So the U.S. going after him for tax evasion is not the only financial situation going on. But I thought it was interesting that Monero's listed in that court case, and he's shilling it on this network with Tucker. Okay, so here is I thought this was interesting. This is the next clip from the interview.
A lot of people in the crypto world, I think, are admirable people. I'm friends with some of them. One you mentioned, actually, people I like and admire and largely agree with. But I'm a little bit confused as to why you're the only person I've ever heard say what you just said. Why aren't the people promoting various cryptocurrencies also sounding the alarm that none of the transactions you conduct using these currencies are private. In fact, they're very easily trackable by government. Why is nobody saying that?
Because
like that question is funny to me, because it's like I'm not a racist because I have a black friend, and then you go proceed to say like the most racist thing about black people, but you're not a racist. So Tucker has crypto friends, and he's like even one of the people you've mentioned here, Ver. But why are all of these Bitcoin maximalists terrible people? Why are you the only one talking?
Right.
Well,
to me too, this is something that I guess, it's controversial and your mileage may vary on it, but Bitcoin, the point of a decentralized ledger is the opposite of private transactions. It's supposed to represent peer-to-peer transactions, but it's the point of Bitcoin. The reason Bitcoin is trusted is that it's an open source ledger. Everybody can see the ledger. Your name isn't in there, right? This is where people get confused and they're like, oh, John sent $10 of Bitcoin on the ledger. That's not how it works. The ledger is open. You can see, everybody in the world can see $10 went from this wallet number to this wallet number at this time. You can make 1 million wallets. You can try to cover your path, right? But this is why actually, ironically, what they are saying is a lot of the same stuff. It's like the inversion of the media FUD, where media is talking about how criminals use Bitcoin. It's not a good thing to use if you're a criminal, because you can trace patterns in the code because it's open source.
You can actually
the whole premise here.
You can actually trace it even better, because it's
yeah, exactly.
You can trace it even better. And what he did, like he had companies where he was receiving Bitcoin from, so they were able to track which accounts were his. And so like if you're doing illegal things and the government needs to figure out what you did with the money, they're going to be able to track, because it's an open source blockchain, but you can't change it.
Right.
Right. But that is kind of
the benefit of that. The benefit of that is if you reverse engineer that, this goes back to like the Joe M video that Q people are familiar with from freaking 7-8 years ago now. Everything is surveilled on the Bitcoin ledger, including if and when agencies and government institutions use it. So every transaction on there's no more laundering between banks, or at least if there is, it would have to be disguised, right? So it's just kind of a misrepresentation of one of the arguments for Bitcoiners.
Yeah. Cam Cooksey, African-American who's at GART, confirms what I said about racism. And he says that I can be as racist as I want, since he's my friend now. So stay tuned, I guess.
It's your card. Use it wisely.
Censorship and propaganda works. Lots of people are saying that, but very few people other than myself have a big enough platform or a loud enough voice to get much attention. And because I had such a big, platform and big voice, boom, suddenly I'm looking at 109 years in prison. I don't think that's a coincidence.
I've literally never heard of this guy. I know people in crypto probably have, but I literally never heard of this guy until he did this Tucker interview. But again, he's like, because of my huge following and what I'm saying, boom, get arrested.
Today's excited. Bitcoin's about almost $100,000. Maybe it would have been $100,000 half a decade ago if it hadn't been hijacked and hadn't been destroyed in its usefulness as cash for the world. So,
hear what he said there? He said, yeah, it's great. It's $100,000, but it could have been years ago. If it hadn't been destroyed in its usefulness for the world, Bitcoin, the ledger, the original Bitcoin is what we have now at $100,000. It hasn't been changed or destroyed.
Yes, Donald Trump's been hoodwinked. He wants to create a strategic stockpile of a thing that's just on its last legs, right? Just hit its all-time high, God candle. Many more to come, but it's totally. And again, in all of these little asides about how Bitcoin's dead, he doesn't talk about it. The craziest part, I think it might have been in an earlier clip you played, unless it's one coming up, but he talks about how the problems with Bitcoin and what the agencies did to Bitcoin go against Satoshi's original vision, and again, never mentions that he was one of the main forces behind going against the original vision of the protocol. But he's kind of talking about it here. Like, you notice, guys, that he goes back and forth between being one of the prime Bitcoin pushers to now saying that it was totally destroyed.
Yeah, and there's more.
You need to look at what's seen and what's not seen. And what we see today, okay, it's close to $100,000. What's not seen is what it could have been if companies like Microsoft and Expedia and these other big companies around the world didn't have to stop accepting Bitcoin.
Microsoft still accepts Bitcoin and never stopped.
Because of its slow transaction.
Go look it up. I did.
Transaction fees, slow transaction times, and unreliable transactions, and lack of privacy as well. So it's really disappointing. But thank you for giving me a platform to help sound the alarm, because I don't want to see the entire world wind up imprisoning themselves inside of some sort of a financial prison that they're building, even if it has a cool sounding name like Bitcoin.
We've all been hoodwinked because Bitcoin has a cool sounding name.
Not like a Monero or any of these other.
I think this
any
might
of these
be
other cryptos. None of those have cool names.
This might be the same clip.
Everyone today is excited. Bitcoin's about.
Yeah, that's the same clip. Hold on, let me pull up the next one. Okay, there's only. I think I only have one more clip here.
Who is Satoshi?
I don't know, and if anybody knows, I'm not aware of that. But whoever he is or wherever he is, he literally invented one of the most important things in the entire history of humankind, up there on par with how important the invention of electricity or the transistor or the internet was. It really is one of the most world-changing technologies ever. And so whoever he is, wherever he is, or they are, or she is, they deserve their privacy, because clearly that's what they want.
So it doesn't sound like you're suspicious.
To change their protocol to fix everything that they got wrong. He leaves that unsaid.
So it doesn't sound like you're suspicious that Bitcoin was created by the intel agencies as a kind of trap for people.
I don't think it was created that way initially, but I am suspicious, and I do think that the intel agencies and other groups have converted it and hijacked it into becoming a financial trap.
Who is?
And that hasn't happened. It hasn't. It's still the original chain. So again, misrepresentations throughout this whole thing, and Tucker feeds into it the whole time. I mean, it's a 40-minute interview. Once you understand that the whole premise of this is okay, I was going to show you guys this. So he was saying that 2014 I come out with my book, and all of a sudden they're after me. They're arresting me for this, right? And it's true. He did launch his book on April 5th of 2024. Launched his book, The Hijacking of Bitcoin. This is what he's saying they're coming after him for. Roger Ver knew about the investigation into him for tax fraud in 2017, December of 2017. Ver first learned the department's investigation after special agents with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division appeared at the law office of Ver's tax counsel and conducted an unannounced interview of one of Ver's attorneys. This is Ver's own attorney admitting to this in his counterfiling for the tax charges. Again, not making an argument about whether taxes are good or bad or this whole situation, or if he should be arrested at all for leaving the country and not paying the expatriation taxes. Not making that argument here. What I'm saying is he's misrepresenting the entire premise for this interview and why Bitcoin has been hijacked and can't be trusted, and the government's after him because he wrote a book about the hijacking of Bitcoin. Not true. He knew about this investigation into him since 2017. So that's a total straight up lie and bullshit. And when you know that, when you understand that, and you look at what this interview is doing, like, you can clearly tell this is a narrative seeding of some sort. It appears to be an anti-Bitcoin one. Maybe it's an anti-tax one, and Tucker is putting a highlight on that, and we're supposed to have the debate of whether we should be paying taxes like this. I'm all for that. But it appears to be much more on the lines of Bitcoin bad. It's been subverted by the government.
Into Bitcoin. Yeah, be careful of getting into that, because it could be a CIA trap, which is, hey, just do your own research, right? Invest only in things that you trust. But yeah, I'm not sure if it's Monero. I'm not sure if that's the one.
Yeah.
It's,
but watch this stuff. Like once you see a narrative op being deployed, it changes your whole perspective. And that's why this interview literally took me 7 hours to go through a 40-minute interview. And I was watching it at like 1.25 speed when I was watching it, because every time something would be said, I'd go, I could have paused this thing and walked you through 7 hours of it with me, because there's that much here. Like I took 5 short screenshots, didn't even read them all, from a 42-page indictment of all the misconduct he did and allegedly did, and lying to his attorneys and not disclosing stuff. Like, he clearly didn't pay the taxes that the tax code said he should have paid at the time. He owes like $40 or $50 million. That's why they're after him, and have been after him since at least December of 2017. It was probably well before that, because you don't just like go to his attorney's office right away. He also alleges in the interview with Tucker that it's illegal for them to like go break attorney-client privilege like they did. That's not true, because if you are using your attorney-client client privileges for nefarious reasons, then yeah, they can breach that. We that's what Durham did. We talked about that.
Yeah.
God dang it, there's one more I wanted to play. Okay, do you have anything to add? I'm going to pull this other video.
Well, again, I think the tax, I mean, I would just, my main takeaway from it is not the tax stuff. I mean, I think it's important to point out that he's misrepresenting his situation, like you're saying. I think the bigger signal here is that takes 2 or 3 times in this interview to praise the progenitors or progenitor of Bitcoin, while then never mentioning the fact that he was the one who very, very literally hijacked or was endorsing the hijacking of the Bitcoin protocol. It's the most literal form of him doing what he says the other side did. Bitcoin, the original Bitcoin protocol remains as it is and has gone forward in time. Roger Ver wanted something different, so he endorsed the forking of that protocol. For people to keep asking what the fork is, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's just taking the original base code, changing it, so now it doesn't change the Bitcoin code, it forks into a different coin, which is called Bitcoin Cash. He wanted Bitcoin, the consensus protocol of the core Bitcoin code, to change block sizes for speed and efficiency and all these arguments that people have had. The argument against those arguments is that what you gain in speed and efficiency, you lose in security.
We don't need to get too far into the rabbit hole of like the Bitcoin forking stuff. That's the main thing here is he's misrepresenting stuff, and that's the gist of it. But you guys got to listen to this clip, and this could be the whole reason he's doing it as well. Okay,
completely innocent, and we literally fought this thing all the way to the Supreme Court in regards to my attorney-client privilege documents.
I don't think that's true. The only thing I saw about a Supreme Court was related to his GGSI or CI case. If it is true, I haven't seen it yet. It's not in the DACA report on Pacer from what's filed with the courts in, I think it's California. But I'm not saying it's not true. I just haven't seen it.
When they finally got access to those documents, they were probably mad because it was me literally telling my attorneys, do everything perfectly. I don't want to have any problems. And so they had a big giant letdown. So there was a Supreme Court case in regards to myself. People need to understand how insane it is that the IRS raided my tax attorney, their office. How can you raid someone's attorney's office to violate attorney-client privilege in the U.S.? That's the stuff that all the U.S. propaganda wants you to believe goes on in Russia all the time and other countries. But they're doing it right there at home in where I was born and raised in the United States of America. It's insane that that's going on. So President Biden can do the right thing. He just recently, pardoned his son. He can issue a preemptive pardon for me.
So he's kind of like asking for a pardon. And maybe that is the whole reason for it. I don't know,
goodness.
But this is.
I just want him to sell me a car. That's all I want.
Yeah, it's crazy. But again, the reason I played it, I wanted you guys to see what I saw and like what when you recognize narrative ops. I think it's important because we see it all the time, and this was one. I don't claim to know exactly what it was. I have guesses, speculation. This guy wants a pardon. This guy wants people to buy Monero because he has a financial stake in that. He doesn't like Bitcoin. He's very anti-Bitcoin, and he wants you to think that the government has taken over Bitcoin while Bitcoin's at its highest point, and Tucker is helping him do it. And Tucker has its own reason for it. I'm not saying he's necessarily in on it. He could be exposing this guy. Don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I saw somebody in the chat say it earlier, but I said it earlier when John and I and Badlanders were talking about this interview. But one of the greatest subtle little absolute takedowns that we've ever seen in the info war was Vladimir Putin beginning his exchange with Tucker Carlson by informing his audience that he had applied to be in the CIA before he was the most famous journalist in the world. And Chris and I did the movie Days of Thunder a few weeks ago. Chris had picked that, the racing Tom Cruise movie, and Chris wanted to talk about the concept of drafting off of other cars to gain pole position. And I think it's a great analogy Chris makes to the way Donald Trump operates. We certainly go back and forth on many of these figures, especially in the media. I don't know if Tucker has good intentions or bad intentions, But I know that anybody with massive audiences like that, you should watch very, very closely. And I think it's notable when they were trying very, very hard to become Intel assets and when their family members are Intel assets.
I just think it's a better safe than sorry type approach for me. Like,
yeah,
if it comes out that Tucker has been working with Trump and promoting these narratives for a reason, cool. Like, and then he did a great job of it, but we don't know for sure that's the case. I would rather assume that's not the case with everybody, because we don't know, than assume it is and just trust everything he says and does blindly. And this is my approach with everyone, even Charlie Kirk. Like, he is much closer to Trump than we are. I'll admit that. But we know he's lying, or at least not disclosing election fraud on his network for a financial gain. And so if he's doing that at Trump's direction, then great. If that comes out, I'll praise him for it, because he did a good job. But until we know that to be true, I'm assuming that he's doing it for financial benefit, and I find that to be not okay, because I personally don't have that approach. We can disagree on it, but that's how I approach things. Let's get to the rants. Micro tool maker, and these might not even be the first ones. Hold on.
First one is from nobody. I think I've got them all.
We didn't get any. You got them all. I forgot to do the thing right away. So
while you're doing this, Micro tool maker is the second one, so that's close enough. Nobody said, "Thanks, gentlemen, John. I sent you a what?" Oh yeah,
gotta go pee quick.
Nobody said, "Thanks, gentlemen, John. I sent you a text. No rush. You're my favorite teacher, so this tip is for your apple." That's a strange sentence. An apple. Oh yeah, that's something you used to give to teachers, right? Kind of a little weird, but thanks. Micro tool maker, $117. Where we go one, we go all. Thank you very much. Very generous of you. Much appreciated. Crane Op, John Mullen tea for cough. Never heard of it. North Carolina gal, John, put Vicks on the bottom of your feet and put socks on. It will help with that cough. I love all the elixirs. At Kim Navilis, Indian phone scammers preying on seniors equals Act Blue. They always wanted gift cards. Huh. That's interesting. I've always just chalked that up to Indian scammers being Indian scammers, but certainly could be more to it. Crane Op, $17. John Book, Primal Panacea, Thomas E. Levy, MD, J.D. Vita. Findings will blow your mind, full of references to validate all claims. I don't know what the claims are. Paul PP, hi gents, what do you think of the whole Syrian army fleeing from the combat zone and walking toward Lebanon? Methinks Putin just got himself a professional army to finish the job in Ukraine.
We discussed that.
Just saying, Lavrov said that the Russian ships moving out was part of a maneuver, almost like it's maneuver defense. CanCon, we read that. I don't want to read CanCon twice.
I don't think we read this one.
No?
All of GEC's employees are just being reassigned. It's not going away. It's spreading. But the funding for what they were doing at the GEC is going away. And the DOJ department is going to be looking at every one of these agencies. And if somebody's doing something they shouldn't be doing what the funding's for, I'm assuming that they're not going to be allowed to stay there. So
do me enough, John.
I think it's a good sign. I'm sorry. I'll be a normie doomer from now on, CanCon.
No one where CanCon hangs around. Got to doom it up. JF Kennedy, fake, that is all.
He wanted me to read that. And that's not what it says, but.
Yeah, it does. Paul PP, plus there might be a false flag attack falsely blamed on Russia to declare war. They can always go back to reclaim Syria with the full help of the Russian army after. I'll put the link in the comment.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Simel, just FYI, Q drops 433, 787, and 1122 say trust Ray. Maybe he was part of the expose op.
It's possible, but there's no evidence of it other than the Q drops. Definitely possible, though.
Rocky Top Apologist, BB, happy B-Day, love your writing style. Mile-long sentences and going around the block to get across the street. Yet the circuitous route is the best one to see the neighborhood. Thanks. That's a great way to put it.
It's not your birthday, by the way. The reason I said that is because the balloons showed up on the screen. Do it again. Can you?
It was just a psychop.
Can you do the balloon thing?
I think it's this. Or it's this.
There. Happy birthday.
Apparently I did that while gesturing.
By the way, don't forget to hit the thumbs up, everybody.
1027 JS, $20. Hi guys, thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you.
Foxo1. If Trump utilizes the recess to appoint cabinet members, there's a 10-day wait. You thinking what I'm thinking? 10 Days of Darkness.
Ooh, I like that.
Many such interpretations. Rocky Top Apologist, I jumped into the show during the beard intel convo. Has anyone asked if a bearded clam would be considered intelligence? Sorry, drinking. Okay.
Love it.
Nope, we haven't. Astronomy, $17. Appreciate your take on foreign relations. This present admin has done such a great job of diplomacy. Yeah. TJ Benedetti, praying for Syria. Thank you. Train Up, BB, the movie Untouchables. Really? Yeah, just that name just didn't hit me. I wasn't already a grown adult during the Al Capone situation like Ukraine. Space Monkey sent us $3 and a lot of words in different rants about how just Roger did not fork Bitcoin. He was an advocate, but he had nothing to do with the split. He also did not name himself Bitcoin Jesus. That was a nickname he adopted reluctantly. He's an atheist. I imagine that this is the voice that Space Monkey wrote these in. Y'all really need to read Roger's book before you condemn him. BB, you are wrong about everything you've said about him. Okay, I think I got the point across.
Thank you
so much for your very genuine support, Space Monkey. I appreciate you.
Here is Roger Ver with Craig Wright. Picture of those two hanging out.
That's
Craig,
Satoshi, guys. Craig Wright, Satoshi
claimed to be
Nakamoto.
Satoshi.
Yep. Bitcoin Jesus and Satoshi. What a pair. Wedge Gravy. My problem with digital currency is that it's digital. The tech may not exist today to get at it, but eventually someone will figure out how to steal it with the tech of their generation. I understand the talk about quantum computers and all that kind of stuff. The funny thing about that is if quantum computing ever gets to the point where it can hack the main Bitcoin protocol and steal private keys, it would be billions of times powerful enough to hack into every financial instrument in the world and take everything immediately. Like, guys, your bank accounts are digital.
Yeah.
Like, unless you just run purely on trading gold bars at your grocery, quantum computers will also drain all of your assets.
So if it gets to that point, it doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin or cash or anything. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, like total doomsday scenario. Like, you've got something good when people are like, but if the world completely ends, this will not save it. And it's like, that's correct.
What happens to Bitcoin if an asteroid destroys the Earth, huh?
Yeah. My favorite quote on that ever was from Pip, our own Pip. And he said, people always say, what if the light goes out? And he said, what if humanity goes out, MFer? Like, talking about the future of... Anyway, just silly stuff. But hey. Jason of TGA, seems like Powell of the Federal Reserve kind of diffused the probable clown op around all this by stating clearly that Bitcoin is not a competitor for the US dollar, but is a competitor for gold. That was interesting.
Yeah.
Yep. And again, I mean, I guess if Roger Ver is right about the psych ops, then the Trumps are in on it. They're part of the psych op of getting you all trapped in Bitcoin.
Yeah, but it's just interesting because a lot of the stuff he was saying is about how the original Bitcoin was like so good, but it's been hijacked and controlled when it's literally the same exact thing. And it to me, it almost seems like if I had to give my hypothesis here is one, he wanted to highlight his case and like present himself as like innocent to get a pardon from Biden. Two, he's like, he had a 200,000 some plus Bitcoin at one point back in the day. Like millions of dollars. Imagine what that'd be worth now. I think he sold a bunch of it, if not most of it. And he's hurting for cash. And so he wants to like either lower it to buy more or lower it and push people to the products he owns, like Monero or Bitcoin Cash. So those go up instead. He's creating a narrative around Bitcoin that is not wholly accurate.
That's a great point too, and I had seen another thinker, I forget who it was in the Bitcoin world, said, I can't unsee it now. They said the only people who hate Bitcoin more than the ones who will never buy it are the ones who did buy it and sold it.
Yeah.
And man, bitter doesn't begin to describe those people. But hey. Also, the patterns in the chat, you can see it's funny. I'll keep an eye. I file the names away when I haven't seen them. And they start with like, where's X person? Yeah. That's how they start. Then it progresses to what you're saying is wrong. And then it eventually progressed to, we got him. It progressed to John takes anything Trump says. John just goes along with everything Trump. Is he a free thinker? Question mark. So they got you, man. You like Donald Trump.
I do like Donald Trump. That's literally not true.
I know, but we're just trying to expose John's ops. Anyway, that's where sometimes people are like, how do you know that the commenters aren't earnest? And it's like, well, because they've never been here before.
Or there's like some people just come to this chat. We see you. You come to this chat and all you do is hate on everything we do. And then sometimes you're in here just, hey guys, there's another stream going on right now. You guys should come watch this other stream. And you try to pull people away to go watch other streams. Like, cool.
It's not subtle. Like we know what you're doing.
You don't need to come here. Like, we're just going to start banning those people. Like, if you hate us that much, just you don't have to be here. We'll show you the door.
Yeah, I like fighting with people. I mean, I like calling you guys faggots. So like, it's not bothering us. Human17, is this the Human? BB, happy birthday. UFC, could Tim Pool be an NPC gateway to the Great Awakening? Excellent show, lads.
We've talked about that a lot, and I don't think so.
Maybe accidentally.
If it comes out that that's the case, great. But until that is proven, I'm not going to assume it is. I'm going to assume he's just lying for financial gain, and I'm not okay with that behavior.
Yeah.
Like, we can't assume all these people are just in on the op.
Right.
And forgive their behavior for continuing ops, like other ops.
Wedge Gravy, it's called cash. Yes, you're correct. We're all going to go back to cash. Federal Reserve notes.
Maybe.
Could be.
Maybe. That's all of them, guys. So thank you for tuning in. Make sure you hit that thumbs up. It's a fun show. Yeah. That's all
You
I
got away with it. Don't think I don't know. You got away with it.
Me?
It's going to be a relevant topic. Well, I appreciate that you wanted to do a full topic on the Tolkien administration, so we'll save that for next week.
We're going to talk about it on Saturday.
We really want to stretch our wings on that.
We're going to talk about it on Saturday, so we can't talk about it on Wednesday.
Okay, it's a teaser for you guys. We're entering the Tolkien administration.
You have a show, your own show now. You could talk about it all you want.
I could. To get somebody on there.
Or you could do a solo show sometime.
I could. Maybe that'll be the one.
But anyway, we're going to end with the rest of G Money's video since I got it pulled up. So have a good night, everybody. We'll catch you later.
He seems like a nice guy. I don't know what to believe.
Well, I'll give you an example. We're talking about cryptocurrencies. Whether or not I sold firecrackers on eBay more than a decade ago has absolutely nothing to do whether or not Bitcoin Cash is a useful cryptocurrency or not. So it's very, very clear which of these groups support free speech and open transactions and which one's a bunch of totalitarian tyrants that want to control people and tell them what they can or can't do with their own money.
Wars going on within the currencies. It's just a kettle of fish. Drew in Indiana, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Alex. First, I want to say it's well known in the Bitcoin community that Roger Ver is a scammer, and this is his latest scam. Just hours before this interview, he manipulated the price of Bitcoin Cash up 25% just to push his narrative. And I do have a question for him. He's been telling everyone that Craig Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, but this can be easily proven through cryptography by signing the Genesis block, which means proving that he mined the first of Bitcoin. He cannot do that, but Roger continues telling people that this guy is Satoshi Nakamoto, which is a lie.
He must release the core from Cybertron, the heart of our world. Will you release the core?
Haven't traded a single.
Will you release the cube? That's right, it's the cube. So are you Megatron? Roger Ver, are you Megatron? If so, prepare for battle.
I'm not Megatron. I haven't traded a single Bitcoin Core or Bitcoin Cash today. Of course, I'm pleasantly surprised that the price is up 25% today. That isn't because of me. I don't know who did it, but I think people understand Bitcoin Cash is useful as money. Bitcoin Core is not. And the developers behind Bitcoin Core don't want it to be useful as money, mainly because they don't even understand what made Bitcoin a success in the first place. In regards to me saying that Craig Wright is Satoshi, I have never said that publicly. I have no idea if he's Satoshi or not, and whoever Satoshi is, wherever he is, he deserves to have absolute complete privacy because that's what he wants out of the world. And whether or not Craig Wright is Satoshi or not, the things that he is saying is spot on. They're exactly in line with what made Bitcoin successful. He has an incredibly deep understanding of economics and the reasons that Bitcoin became a success. Whether he's Satoshi or not, I think he is someone worth listening to.
Okay. Here's my problem. See, I just want to know about Bitcoin and currency in the markets. This is why I always stay out of all this, and why as soon as I get one Bitcoin guest on, it's like boom, 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 more, and then I'm going to be in the middle of all this. I know who the pseudonym or whatever, the Japanese guy, the nom de plume, whatever, or is it a real guy? That's a whole nother area of a soap opera that I don't have the brain space to be involved in with all these other big serious issues happening. So I'm glad we're having a debate, but this is why I stay out of Bitcoin. Good Lord. I mean, Drew, thank you for the call, but I will say this: I don't know Roger Ver. I know he's like when the kingpins of Bitcoin. Seems like a smart guy. And then all these other guys pile in so quickly that don't like him. It makes my head spin. What's going on here, Roger?
Maybe it's an orchestrated attack. Maybe there are a bunch of people that have been brainwashed by the previous orchestrated attack out there. Anybody with any common sense, you have two forms of Bitcoin. One is fast, cheap, and reliable. The other is slow, expensive, and unreliable.
Sure, but do you see how it all devolved into that discussion instead about the general future about cryptocurrencies? And the establishment clearly is coming after it right now.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly what the establishment would want, a bunch of infighting within Bitcoin so that the cryptocurrency ecosystem so that people are busy fighting with each other rather than fending off a bunch of regulation and control by governments. And congratulations to the disruptors that you guys have succeeded in disrupting this incredibly liberating tool for the entire planet. But you've just slowed us down. You haven't stopped us. We're still going to enable every single human being.
Well, I think the graph shows that. I mean, it goes up and down, but over time, it's going straight up.
It is. It's more useful than dollars. It's more useful than euros. It's more useful than the Japanese yen, and there's a limited supply. You don't have these central banks that can print as many as they want at any time for any reason. The supply is limited by the laws of mathematics, not the promise of some politicians. And we all know how much we should trust the promise of a politician. It's very, very clear which of these groups support free speech and open transactions, and which one's a bunch of totalitarian tyrants that want to control people and tell them what they can or can't do with their own money.